Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And Happy New Year, Happy 2024. So we are, I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:35. And this is the meeting of January 17th. And this is the meeting of the City of Soledad Joint City Council Successor Agency Housing Authority meeting. Thank you, everyone that's joining us here in the chambers, or those that are joining us via Zoom as well. Your participation is really critical to the conversations that we have as part of the council. Just a couple of comments in terms of how you can participate tonight. You can join the meeting via Zoom. The meeting ID is on the agenda. For today, that meeting ID is 846-0127-7976. You can also join us via telephone, and that number is 1-669-900-6833. And just as a reminder, we do have Spanish translations that are also offered as part of today's meeting. So with that, if we can, we have a council member that has been excused. He won't be here. Council member Cabrera is out sick, so he won't be joining us. And as you know, it's that flu season, so I'm not feeling as well either. And I see that my counterpart, Mayor Pro Tem, is probably not feeling as well either. Good. I know there's a lot going on. So anyways, please bear with us as we start this new year, and hopefully looking toward better months. So with that, if we can get a roll call, please.
Mayor Ana Velasquez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ben Jimenez Jr.
Here.
Councilmember Maria Corlejo.
Here.
Councilmember Fernando Cabrera.
Okay, so we do have a quorum, so we will move on to our next item on the agenda. That is our public comment. And so that we didn't have our closed session items, so those will be tabled for our next meeting. Correct? Okay. So we'll move on then to our next item, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, if I can ask Councilwoman Corrales to lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we have some additions and modifications to the agenda, and I will turn this over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So we are going to be shifting around some of the order. First of all, we are going to move C4 to February 21st for further clarification that the city attorney and I have to make regarding sponsorship of events. And then we are going to be moving a couple of the business items around and the presentation. We are going to move the presentation on the truck routes to the end of the agenda instead of first. And then in terms of the business items, we are going to move the business item regarding the consideration of a parcel tax to support future fire services to number 4.
Okay.
And then depending on how folks are feeling, we can determine whether or not to dispense with the announcements and reports at the end of the meeting.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Megan, for providing those modifications. So as we start our first meeting of the year, just want to again thank you for everyone that's joining us here. Thank you for your patience in advance as we walk through this agenda and some of the modifications that are made. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is public comments. So at this time, any member of the public may address the city council on items, that are relevant to the city. Please note that we will have, there's a limited of 3 minutes. Please be brief and to the point. So at this time, do we have any members of the public that wish to make any, public comments? Okay, seeing none, then do we have any members of the public that is joining us via Zoom, that wish to make any public comments?
I do have one hand raised for Gabby.
Okay, Getty, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, City Council members. I'd like to address the Mayor of Soledad. Last year in 2023, I wrote a letter, an email to the Mayor of Soledad about the City Council members' abuse of power, and after Councilwoman Martinez was found guilty. Greenfield Council of Greenfield found Yanely Martinez guilty of abuse of power. I emailed you as a woman of color and a woman in a position of power to denounce her actions.
So Gabby,
I wrote to you after seeing you celebrate her during a meeting, and you disregarded her actions. I was hoping for you to address this issue privately by replying to my email. It's been months and I still haven't received a reply. This is coming from a woman who had Dolores Huerta support you. May I remind you that Councilwoman Martinez did this to a farm worker, Spanish-speaking immigrant. Yet your silence speaks volumes. And I will end with a quote. In the end, we will truly remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Again, Mayor, as a woman of color in your position, I think it's really important for you to hold other people accountable, especially if you have that position, if this person has been your ally and you've celebrated, and there's countless pictures of you on Facebook with her. And again, I'm still waiting for a reply. Thank you and have a good evening.
so just for clarification for the public, then the council is not able to make comments on public comments, but I will direct this to our city attorney to, for future, if we can please get some directives in terms of what is considered city business and what is not considered city business, especially when there's public comments that are made in regards to items that are not specific to items that are being discussed as part of the city business.
We will, yes, we will be bringing back a report on public comment and the control, because of the fact that there has been some abuse of public comment at meetings throughout the state of California in recent months. And we'll be bringing that report back to you about what the parameters are, what we can or cannot restrict, and so forth, and ways to deal with hate speech and things along those lines within, I think it's the next meeting or the meeting after, maybe the meeting on the 21st.
Yes.
It's on the 21st.
Thank you. And also combating misinformation. What is our role as elected officials in terms of public comments that are made and making sure that we are able also to address some of the misinformation to the community? Okay, so is there any other public comments at this time? Okay, then I'm on now, Stephen, I just can't see, I don't have the panel view. Okay, so at this time, then we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, and at this time, it is our youth council report. So we will have our youth commissioner, Rodrigo Chavez Contreras, and Liliana Negrete present a written report, or verbal report to us.
Hello, Deputy Council. Today, I'm just here myself. Liana was not able to join us actually because they are currently practicing to go to Las Vegas as the cheer team has made it to the nationals. So for the youth council report, I just want to start off by giving you guys our focus. For December, the Soledad Youth Council is excited to initiate the process of selecting this year's initiative. Along exploring the possibilities of implementing this with the general plan. We look forward to insightful conversations and collaboration amongst all our members and community leaders. For December, we have been meeting with the youth council. So the Soledad Youth Council has had a meeting on December 4th, where our Soledad Youth Council members were divided into smaller groups and tasked with developing and creating an initiative. So some topics that were discussed are including more internship opportunities with the city, providing more educational programs, extracurricular activities for the youth, and creating more space for the environment. With these ideas presented to the youth council, we look forward to narrowing our ideas to a concise initiative during our next meetings. From then on, we will gather research and create some surveys that will be shared with the youth. This will be used as our data and presented to our annual forum this year really. And we also have a meeting with the South County Youth Council, so Greenfield and Gonzalez. As youth commissioners have attended a joint meeting alongside the Gonzalez and Greenfield Youth Council on 12/19. Within this meeting, we elaborated on some past and future events, really just getting to know one another, knowing how each youth council works. I thought that was really interesting to see. And I had a lot of fun really. Being able to see how we could all grow alongside each other despite we live in different places shows unity within the youth councils in all of Warner County. We have been able to establish monthly youth commissioner meetings actually and have begun discussion on a youth summit this upcoming March. Hope to see you guys there. For the Parks and Rec and general plan, during your distributions, we worked with Jesus Venezuela on learning about the general plan and Parks and Rec master plan. Together, we have been able to establish multiple dates in which student volunteers and adult volunteers distributed around door hangers to spread awareness on the upcoming general plan and Parks and Rec plan. They display survey information about areas in our city and various areas in our city were covered. So overall, we were able to raise general plan survey responses by 81% and Parks and Master Plan responses by 71%, which is really cool to see.
Yeah.
I think that's about it for December. I have to work with you guys a lot closer. I know Liliana and I have some things up our sleeve to show you guys in the future. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. And thank you to you also and Liliana and some of the other members of the youth council, because I know during your vacation time, right, during the holiday season, you guys were really active in our community and door knocking and talking to people about the general plan. And so thank you so much for the work that you guys have done and your commitment to making sure that we're raising awareness. Thank you. Council, any comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the chair did have something to say. Just Rodrigo wanted to thank you for everything that you do for the youth council. I know the general plan is so important to the future of our city, and I'm sure you guys found out. And I would love to just have conversations with you guys. There's probably a lot of people that were not on social media that didn't even know this was, going on, these surveys and need of information and input. So just wanted to thank you and Liliana, even though she's not here, and the rest of the youth council for everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, and it's introductions of community and economic development director and staff. And I will turn this over to our city manager.
Great. I am so pleased that after many months of me trying to do two roles, city manager and director role, we hired Kanu Yang. Miss Yang actually moved from her town, Lemoore, to the city of Soledad. So that's great that we have a new resident as well as a new community and economic development director. And I don't want to steal her thunder, but I think the staff was extremely, when we went through interviews, I also had many staff, both the community and economic development staff and the directors, interview the candidates, and they were so impressed with Kanu's energy and dedication. And so there was a consensus that she was a great hire, and we were able to negotiate. We've been waiting patiently for her to move to Soledad. So with that, I'll let Kanu talk a little bit about herself, and then we have two other recent hires who all started last week. So very excited.
So good evening, and thank you guys for taking the opportunity to time, council members and mayor. Once again, my name is Kanu Yang. I am now the community and economic development director here at the city of Avenal.
Soledad.
Oh, sorry, Soledad. I was the former community development director of Avenal, which actually it segues to. I've been in local government for at least 12 years, or specifically in community development. And my last jurisdiction was the city of Avenal, which is actually quite similar to Soledad. They also have a prison, and they also have a very Hispanic Latino community. And so I was able to help them with their economic growth by bringing in their first franchise. And I was also the grants administrator for that city. So I brought over $10 million to them for grants in regard to public facilities and housing. And I know that as one of Megan's key goals for this year is, of course, is housing here. So which leads me to Beatrice. She is our new housing analyst. She just started the same week I did. She has about 3 years working in housing at the city of Salinas. So we're very excited to have her on board. She's very knowledgeable in regards to the housing, and I believe Beatrice has also translated here at the city of Soledad. So it's very great to have her here and have her be a part of the team here. She is a resident of Soledad, so we're really excited that we can steal her from Salinas and have her be involved in their community here. Now, in regards to community, we did hire Henry Aguilar. He is now our community engagement coordinator. He is currently right now on loan, in a sense, to the Community and Economic Development Department. He is helping us with outreach in regards of a general plan, and we're also working a little bit in regards of having him influence a little bit of economic development, working with Tensia as well, and trying to do a little more outreach in regards of what are the needs of the community and how can we address them as community and economic development. So that's just a quick rundown in regards of our department, but you guys are more than welcome to, swing by. We are located at the Gateway. To come by and just say hello, pop in, and maybe we can have lunch, either way. And as Megan has stated, I did move here from the city of Lemoore, so I would love to have conversations with you guys, and you guys can tell me stories about Soledad so I can get to know the community a little more. And I'm very open, and I'm super excited to be here, and I hope that I can give you guys the best that I can for this community.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and welcome. Welcome to the city of Soledad. I went to school in Fresno State, so familiar with the Central Valley, and also work for a state senator that represents that area. So thank you for now being a Soledad resident, and thank you to our side of the valley. Thank you for coming to our side of the valley.
Yeah, it's very different. The Central Coast is very different from the Central Valley, and I completely understand in regards to what you guys mean by win. In Soledad.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely right.
Yeah. Summer's gonna be great because, of course, as you know, Mayor Fresno has triple digit weather. So
you're gonna love it here.
I'm gonna love it here. But thank you guys so much for the time and opportunity.
Well, welcome, and thank you to the team as well. Thank you to Beatriz. I don't think she's here, but we want to also congratulate her. I know that she has translated for us in the past. Her family has been here in Soledad for a while as well. And Megan comes from the city of Salinas. I worked for the city of Salinas for 20 years, so it's good that Beatriz is coming here and that she's able to work here, right? I know we say we want to make sure that our residents are able to live, work, and play here. And so it's exciting that we have Beatriz that's from here who can also have an opportunity to work here as well.
Yeah.
And for Henry Aguilar, also congratulations to him on being the community coordinator. I know that there's a lot that the city is undertaking right now with the general plan, with the housing element, with a lot of economic development. So it's a really exciting time to be here and to join the team, as there's so much momentum that's happening. So welcome again, and thank you for being part of our team. And we welcome you to the city of Soledad.
Yeah.
And I'll turn it over to the council members if they want to make any remarks.
Yeah, I just want to say welcome, and excited to have you here. We got a lot of projects going on, so you're without a doubt needed, and take some of the items off of Megan's plate. And that way we get some things done and move on forward. So welcome, and if you're offering lunch, I'm available. You buying? I'm there for sure. But no, I'm just teasing.
Oh, no.
Maybe a couple
Yeah,
coffee.
you gonna try some case of birria? That'd be
Oh,
yeah.
But welcome.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Canoe and I had met before. She came to the shop while she was moving, and you know, it's funny because I remember moving and being exhausted, but you went and you still had like you were still energetic, you were still talkative. I was like, whoa. So, you know, just wanted to welcome you and, you know, of course, Beatrice, you know, as well. You know, it's great to have a familiar face. And then Henry did introduce himself via email, so I still haven't had the pleasure of meeting him face to face, but he did send me an email, I think it was last week, and introduced himself. I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Once again, it's a great opportunity and I'm super excited to be part of the Soledad team, but also be part of the resident of Soledad. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to let council know that what I've asked Canoe to focus on in the immediate is permitting and economic development, because I know we need some focus in those areas, and that was a request for council, so she's already getting to work on those items.
So yeah, we're gonna start streamlining and making it a lot easier for our community and our residents.
Yeah.
We're gonna start working on it.
Thank you. We're excited also about your grants administrative background, as well as, you know, our city is some of the smaller cities, as you know, and the access to grants opportunities is really critical for us. So
Yeah, one thing I always say about rural communities is that your biggest power is collaboration and partnerships. And so that's something I can bring to the community, and hopefully we'll be able to make something happen.
great. Thank you and welcome
Thank you.
again. Okay, so with that, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, and that's council presentations. We have two. The city council will present a proclamation in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day to Monterey County Black Caucus Representative Rosalind Green, and I don't see Rosalind.
Might be on Zoom already.
Oh, is she on Zoom?
She is she doing a presentation? Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So Rosalind Green is joining us via Zoom, and it's my honor actually to be able to present this also on behalf of the council, this resolution proclamation to Rosalind. Rosalind and I have known each other for several years now, and I know Rosalind does a lot of good work in terms of social justice and equity in her community and throughout the Salinas Valley. So really excited to be able to present this resolution. And I'm just going to share a few words as part of the proclamation for today. And whereas many of us obviously understand the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King in terms of social justice and equity, and what he did for the civil rights movement for our country and continues, right? The work is not done. But whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dedicated his life to the principles of equality, justice, and nonviolent social change, leaving an incredible mark on the history of our nation. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a time for all citizens to reflect on the ongoing struggle for civil rights, the importance of diversity, and the pursuit of more inclusive and compassionate society. And whereas the city of Soledad recognizes the significance of commemorating the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as a source of inspiration for building bridges and understanding and promoting unity among our residents. Whereas even the gains of the civil rights movement over the years, there are many goals and needs that must be pursued to continue our commitment to achieve justice in our society, including a commitment to economic justice in the face of increasing economic disparity. And whereas the city of Soledad recognizes the great work of the Monterey County Black Caucus, which arose out of the need to center Black voices in decision-making process of government, and has been commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by reminding us that his dream still has not come to fruition. And whereas we look forward to the future with optimism inspired by Dr. King's legacy and informed by his wisdom and vision, let us rededicate ourselves to keeping his dream alive and be reminded that we are united together as one community. Now, therefore, it's my honor to be able to present this on behalf of the council of the city of Soledad on this 15th day of January to the Monterey County Black Caucus, this resolution honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So with that, I want to leave some time to make sure that we are able to have Rosalind share a few words with us. Rosalind, can you unmute yourself?
Thank you so much, Mayor and City Council. It is an absolute honor to receive this resolution on behalf of the Monterey County Black Caucus and Building Healthy Communities. We stand on the shoulders and the legacy of Dr. King, and it's because of the civil rights movement that he led that we are able to do most of the things that we now do in our communities. Again, I want to appreciate each of you for your consideration and making this resolution happen for our team tonight. Please excuse us from not being there in person. I am actually not in town because I am still on the ground fighting the good fight with a collaborative team from our county. So we are still doing the work that all of us share in. Again, thank you. And I want to also thank Jesus Valenzuela. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you for the good work that you're doing. So we do have this proclamation. I want to make sure you're able to see it, our residents are able to see it. So we'll get this to you, whether we mail it out or you and I can schedule lunch once you come back and once you have some time to be able to deliver this. So thank you again for all the work the Black Caucus has done in our community to ensure that we continue with the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and ensuring that we have equality and justice for all community members. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll open it up. I don't know if any of the council would like to say a few words before we move on to our next proclamation.
Yes, just again, I did just want to thank what's it called, the organization for all the work that they have done, and I'm proud that we are getting this proclamation out, and I would love to see maybe some kind of partnership in a future event or something that we might have just to to be able to partner with them, maybe our community engagement department, now that we have a full staff and we could be able to represent all in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rosalind, for all you guys, what you do and continuing the good fight. And I'm glad that we're able to recognize your organization and continue on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind, and thank you for those comments too. I know you have a really amazing youth group that does a lot of active community work. So connecting them with our youth group would be great to be able to ensure that they're collaborating and partnering. So thank you. Okay, so with this, we'll move on to our second presentation of tonight, and this is the City Council and is recognizing and presenting a proclamation in honor of and recognition of Francisco Javier Nieto. So if we can have you come up to the podium first. So I'm going to hand this over to our Mayor Pro Tem, who's going to present the proclamation on behalf of the council.
Yeah, it's my honor. Thank you, Mayor, for giving me this opportunity to present this to Javier Nieto for the years of service that you provided to the city, not only as a planning commission, and I'll read through the resolution as well. However, as a coach for the high school team, the sports team, the soccer teams, and you always had winners on the field. And also, more importantly, you provided a good role model for the young people of our community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. It's a proclamation in honor of the recognition of Planning Commission Francisco Javier Nieto for his dedicated service to the city of Soledad. Whereas he started serving the city of Soledad in 2009 when he was appointed to the City Planning Commission. He has been a resident of Soledad for over 40 years, and he's worked at Bingo Market for more than 20 years. And actually, that's your story. Now, you didn't work there. And thank you for investing in our community, you and Linda, your wife. Born in Salamanca, Spain. Did I say that right?
That's correct, yes.
It is close. Spain's beautiful. Been there a couple times. Nieto settled in Soledad in 1983 when the city's population was around 3,600. As an immigrant from Spain, Nieto faced a language barrier with English, but he was determined to learn English and continue to further his education. Whereas Nieto has been an essential member of the Planning Commission for 14 years, he was encouraged to apply for the position by Adela Gonzalez, the city manager, and was appointed by Richard Ortiz, the former mayor. Nieto also served as the commissioner's vice chair for 2019 to 2020, and as the chair from 21 to 22. During his tenure, he led several significant project discussions, including the Liberty Port subdivision, Santa Clara Apartment subdivision, fifth cycle housing element, Soledad Union School District housing project, and various conditional use permits and code zoning updates. Whereas during his time with the Planning Commission, Nieto was also curious to know that the changes happening in the community and how it was evolving. His experience of living in Soledad, combined with his eagerness to learn new skills, helped him to master his decision-making process. In 2022, Nieto actively volunteered to participate in the Planning Commission Academy to gain more insight and experience as a planning commission. His willingness to take up the opportunities and continue learning is truly commendable. So in addition to all this work for the city, Nieto has been married to his wife for 40 years, Linda, and we met in college in Spain, and they settled here in Soledad after getting married. The city owes a great debt to and gratitude to the Nieto family for allowing him to dedicate his time and energy to the city of Soledad and the Planning Commission for 14 years. Now therefore, being hereby proclaimed by the City Council, the City of Soledad takes considerable pride and pleasure in drawing particular attention to the accomplishment of Francisco Javier Nieto. Through this proclamation, you hereby honor, commend, and congratulate you for your exemplary service to the citizens of Soledad.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think, for giving opportunity, we real quick, we as a person, I'm not sure where to born, but we can choose where to live, we have to live here. I am I'm very proud to say I am considered. Thank you very much. I will continue helping in other roles and in other places, but in Soledad, that's for sure.
Thank you. Javier, thank you. I know we'll take a couple of moments to say something. I know the proclamation is very extensive, but I just want to say congratulations. And again, thank you for making us Soledad. I know your family, obviously, since I was a little girl. Soledad.
And Maria, my mother was just as well. I know her since my kid, just like you. I know you since ever, your family. I know everybody, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was an honor to serve in the planning commission. And let me tell you, it's time, but I learned a lot. So I think I can win out of it. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for all your accomplishments, not only for your 14 years of public service, obviously to the planning commission, but also your 40 years of marriage. That's pretty remarkable, especially in these times. So,
My wife has a.
so again, thank you so much for your legacy of service to our city and for role modeling how important it is to be able to give back to our community. Thank you. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Javier, I just wanted to say thank you for everything. It's, it's so impressive, everything that you have done, as an individual with your family. I know it takes, it's work to be married and, and work through stuff. And having a business, that's very time consuming as well. And then still to make time for your community and, to do it well. I think you're really, hashtag goals for me, that's, you're a great example, I think, for all of us. So thank you for your work and dedication.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say the same that, on a personal level, class guy, good people, buena gente, as we say. And you and your wife, Linda, have had a business here and have served our community. So you're going to be greatly missed on the planning commission, but well deserved that you're going to have time to spend with your family. And when I get your age, I don't want to retire too like that. I might be a little bit older, but yeah, enjoy your family and enjoy your opportunity to go spend time over in Spain, which is so beautiful. You'll have time for
That's the
that.
reason why I just resigned, because I want to. I know I'm gonna spend 4 or 5 months this year over there, and my commitment when I do a commitment is 100%. And I don't want to miss 3 or 4 meetings because I don't think it's even respectful for my other members of the planning commission. I think when you commit to something, a position here, you should be able to to go and have the responsibilities every time. No, oh, I cannot go today because I don't know where. So that's the only reason why I declined, because I want to spend, and I did 5 months out of here. So,
Thank you. Well, we wish we can join you in Spain one day too.
more than that, to be there with you and be chaperone, how is it? I don't know,
Tour guide,
there you
or
go.
tour.
Our chaperone, thank you so much, Javier.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we take a quick photo?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you again for your patience as we're taking some photos and congratulating Javier Nieto for his 14 years of public service to the Planning Commission and also all of his economic contributions as a business owner to the city of Soledad. So I think I'm going to speak a little bit louder so people can hear me as I'm wearing a mask. And I just want to as a matter of transparency, I do have my cup here. I'm not drinking anything else other than there is some medication in there, a TheraFlu, just to make sure that I can make it through this meeting. So wanted to address that. Okay, so we'll move on to our next item. So the presentation, we're going to skip it to the end of the agenda and we're going to move on to our consent calendar. For today, just with the amendments, we do have an amendment to the consent calendar, which is approval of items C-1 through C-6 with the exception of C-4. So that was pulled. So with that, I'd like to ask any members of the council if they wish to pull any items from the consent calendar for future comments or discussion.
C3 for discussion, comment.
Okay, C3, Mayor Pro Tem. And I'd like to pull C6 only for comment.
I'll pull the C3 as well, just so I can give a comment from it.
Okay. So with that, then let me ask any members of the public if there's any members of the public that would like to pull an item from our consent calendar for future for comments or discussion. Any of those joining us here in the chambers? Okay, any of those that are joining us via Zoom? Okay, I can't.
I'll make a motion that we approve,
Okay, hold on. Let me just make sure that there's no public comments via Zoom. I can't see, just so.
Are you in Zoom?
I'm in Zoom now. If you want to give me panel, then I can make
I
sure
don't see
that.
your name.
You don't?
Who you're doing this?
Anna Velasquez?
I don't see that.
Huh, so I'm in.
I can see someone called name.
Is that me?
I don't know. Can you raise your hand? No.
On that.
Oh, can I? Yeah, I raised my hand. Is that me? I did. Got it. Thank you so much for giving me that access. So now I can see. So thank you for that. Okay, so okay, so I don't see any hands up, right? Okay, so I will then, I'll entertain a motion to approve items, C-1, C-2, C-5, 4 or 5, and that's it. Thank you.
So
Okay, so I'll make a motion, there's a motion, there's a second on the floor. Do you need to do roll call? Vote or no?
No, because, yeah, we don't have anybody online yet.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Okay, so motion carries. And then we'll move on to item C-3, and I'll turn this over to Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I want to thank staff for putting this list together. However, as looking through the list, I see that we missed a few things, and so I'm hoping that we include in May the Peace Officers Memorial Week. In addition to September, the National POW MIA Recognition Day as well, and in October, not to forget the National Night Out. So those, if we could add those three to the calendar, and I don't know if any of the council members notice anything else.
I think it's in August, National Night Out.
It's in August,
The
yeah.
second.
Oh, is it not?
Yeah.
October? I looked at one of the old dates.
And you mean for the mayor, proclamation for that national, okay.
And can I just comment, Mayor Pro Tem, on yours, because on the POW flag, and I know if we can look at our flag policy, because I think in the flag policy, we outlined some of those times when we wanted to raise the flag, and I think if we can raise the flag but present a proclamation at the same time, that would be great, because I think there was the pride flag as well that was missing from that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's on the.
I think, to me, I just, I like the list, I just would like to see something else, maybe having to do with children. I know there's like National Dia de los Niños. I wanna say, I don't know what date it is, but I know there's, I've heard it celebrated. There's also Bicycle Day, just like something maybe where we can include our youth and our children. I think that's probably the only thing I would like to see on here that I don't.
Okay, thank you for that. So I know, as was mentioned in the report, that we can add more, so this is not an exhaustive list. So if there's additional things that come up for each of you and that you want to make sure that we present a proclamation, make sure that gets to Megan and the team, so that way we can start adding the list of those that we want to approve as a full council. Okay, so any
Through the mayor, just to give us time, if there's something to add, if you could give us at least, I think, 3 weeks notice, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And if there's no comments on that, then we'll move on to item C-6. And Megan, for me, I just on this one, I know since we're approving a work classification, we're not adding a new job we're adding a new job description, but it's more of a reclassification. I don't know if it's not an item of a routine agenda approval. So would this have to be do we need to do this later when we do this? Should it be on a business item, or does it need to be, is it okay on the consent agenda? That was one question. And then the other one is, I just want to make sure that we have, if you can provide the council with the public works flow chart, that way we have a clear understanding of, I know public works obviously is a big department, and there's the wastewater, and then there's obviously the public facilities, but if we can have an updated flow chart that outlines specifically each of the different managers and the responsibilities, and have it more outlined.
Yeah, through the chair. I think we have done this before via consent, so this is this is more common. And basically, what we're creating is within the maintenance classification, which, the folks do, all the maintenance of the parks and the facilities and the groundskeeping for the city, and also street maintenance, that were tree maintenance. They cover a lot. we have one manager right now that oversees, I think, about, nine individuals. And so this would create a middle person between the manager, which is, Joelle, and the workers, and then can step up when Joelle is, when the maintenance manager is off, to kind of be, provide that oversight. And Mayor, if it's okay, I think Don had something that.
Yes, this is one of the only divisions in the city that has one manager and 9 base level workers. So Joelle basically doesn't have a second in command. So it really comes into play. He's managing all 9 employees. Also, he's the only one on call every night, every holiday, every weekend. So if we can upgrade one of the positions so that that person could relieve the manager, especially with the call outs after hours.
No, thank you, Don, for that. I know it was specific in the report, but I just wanted to make sure, because I know that the last approval process, and just for us, I think, and for the public, just to have the organizational chart, because I know that when you look at all of the different people that they supervise, and then you look at the maintenance, I mean, you look at our wastewater, then there's a whole other division. But just so it could be really easy for our public also to understand the organizational piece of
I
it.
think the one in the current year budget book is up to date for Public Works other than this change.
Okay, thank you.
And then we can certainly forward a PDF of it to council
Please,
after this change.
okay.
And through the chair, quick comment, since you pulled it, I want to bring up as well is that ideally we do this at the mid-year budget and at the annual budget. For some reason this year we've fallen into where we've done a lot of upgrades at many of the positions. And so I want to make sure we get back into the budget process so we can plan accordingly and look at our fiscal responsibilities that how to meet those obligations as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think for me as well, just if we can really do that, I know that we've had a lot of different positions, as the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned. But trying to look at for long-term sustainability, and especially in our Public Works Department and other departments, if we can really do more of an assessment before or at the time of the mid-year budget or the budget approval, so we know and have a good understanding what are those positions that are needed for the future years, right? And it's not coming back to us in terms of reclassifications, because it's hard to try to keep up with all of the different changes that have come before us in terms of staffing. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, through the chair, absolutely, and I've provided that message to staff that any future changes will come at mid-year or the budget year.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve item C-6 and C-3.
And just for clarification, with respect to item C3, is that with the proposed changes or without?
So I know that there was the changes in regards to adding El Dia de los Niños event. So that was
Police officer.
Yeah,
Peace out memorial.
And then any future items that the council wants to see as part of the approval process for the resolution on a yearly basis, then that'll come later. But if council wants new proclamations, then please let staff know 3 weeks before, so they have sufficient time to be able to provide this. Okay, so with that, then
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries unanimously. So we'll move on then to our next item. And it's B2. Thank you, Megan, for keeping me on track. And that's resolution number 6041, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Soledad declaring an emergency pursuant to section 20168 of the Public Contract Code and section 3.24 .040 of the Soledad Municipal Code and authorizing emergency repair work to well number 7 in an amount not to exceed $40,500. And I will turn this over to our Public Works Director, Don Wilcox.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Don Wilcox, Public Works Director. So we're coming back with an update on the city's well system. We currently have 2 wells down. A couple months ago, we came in with a similar request because well number 6 had gone down. Let me back up. So 7, the subject of tonight's well agenda item, went down first. While we're troubleshooting that, 6 went down. We figured out what was wrong with 6 and got an estimate. So that's the one we brought a couple months ago. That was awarded on an emergency basis too. And Moises is online. He's going to give us an update of the details and answer questions regarding the wells. So I'm just going to go through the calendar of events that have happened. So 7 went down first. While we're working on that, 6 went down. Council awarded the repair of that well under emergency because 7 was down and we didn't want the chance of the 3rd one going out. Now we've had enough time to troubleshoot 7 and have an actual estimate, which we got last Wednesday, real close to the deadline for the agenda. So that is $36,592. The city has budgeted $180,000, exactly $180,000 this year for well maintenance. We were hoping to do well 10, one of the ones on San Vicente, but we'll see how much well 6 and 7 repairs take. And I'd like Mo to add any additional information and be available to answer questions.
And I see Moises is on the line. Mo, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So if you like any other questions, I'm here to answer. And mostly well 7, if we don't get it back online, most likely if we lose another well, then it'll be a mandatory no water restrictions, so no irrigating at all. And so good thing it's winter time, but these wells are very important that we get back online.
Thank you, Moy, for providing us with the information that these wells obviously need to be repaired. So let me open it up to the public. Let me take it to the public to see if there's any comments, and then I'll bring it back to the council to see if there's any comments or questions. So any members of the public have any comments on item B-2? And for those that are joining us here in our chambers first, and then I'll take it out to Zoom. Okay, he's seeing none, then I will take it out to Zoom. Any members of our public that are joining us via Zoom have any questions on item B-2? Okay, seeing none, then I'll bring it back to council if there are for questions on item B-2.
Through the chair, thank you, Don, for the presentation. And unfortunately, seems like we're always coming here to pump more money into those wells. Can you tell me how old well 7 and 6 are?
At least 15 years ago, they came in with Maribel 1.
Okay.
So in that time frame.
Okay.
How old? 15?
It's closer to 20 years now. And these are wells that at least one of them is running 24/7, 365 days.
And how deep are those?
They range from 600, 650 all the way down to I think 900 feet. They're in the safe drinking water aquifer, not the superficial one that has all the nitrates in.
Okay, and so our other wells are down that deep?
Yes, all of our wells, including 9, which has some issues, but it's safe and adequate, are all in that deeper aquifer.
Okay.
The closer to the river, the better the water, is
Right.
what we understand.
And so do we, in the future, foresee that water table lowering and thereby needing to go deeper, or that's inevitable?
For the Soledad area, the 4-bay aquifer is fantastic. There's a lot of ag around here. Our wells have not, the cone of depression, which the well pumping takes the water level down in a cone shape, is not what other areas are seeing. We might have gone down a few feet. We're trying to get an accurate measurement of how much they went in down in the 5-year drought. And it's hard to measure because it wasn't much, it wasn't noticeable. A lot of agencies and other aquifers, yeah, they went dry or they dropped 20 or 30 feet. Soledad's been very fortunate, and this 4-bay aquifer is well known to be a super aquifer.
And the cost for a new well, if we were to have to drill for a new, drill or buy a new well?
So land, drilling, equipping, startup, everything would be roughly $2 million. $1 million for the drill, or $1 million for the drilling, and $1 million for the equipping roughly.
Thank you. Those all the questions I have.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I just have some follow-ups since you asked a couple of questions, and I'll take it out to Councilwoman Corralejo. But Don, just in terms of just piggybacking on what Mayor Pro Tem, I guess my concern is, as you mentioned, we've had these wells and some of them, 9 is out and now 7. So a couple of questions in terms of we know now that there's issues with 7, is the work on well 6 going to be expedited to ensure that there is no potential for both of them to be down at the same time? I have several questions, but that's
Okay.
one.
Yeah, fortunately during the winter, we can survive easily on 3 wells. If a third one went down, well 6 and 7 are down, that may be a little tight, especially if we had a warm weather streak.
Okay, but are we expediting the work on well 6?
The well drillers are few and far between and very busy, year round here. So fortunately, Mo has a great relationship with Salinas Pump. They fit us in as soon as we had approvals, as soon as they got parts. So we're getting as good a service. There's a shortage of well drillers and well repair companies in this whole Central Valley. And between Cal Hams and Marina Coast wells and our wells and the other city wells and the ag wells, they do a good job with the few they have. We tried well repairs and well rehabilitators from the Central Valley. In fact, well 6 was done around 2012. And it worked okay, but the response time is very slow. So we're fortunate we have as good as can be had relationship with a well repair company with Salinas Pump right up Highway 101 from us.
So what's the timeline for completion of well 6, of the repairs for well 6?
I think we're close, but I'll have to defer to Mo on that one.
Okay.
So time frame to get 6 and 7 back online, Mo?
6 is online right now, but we'll install these pumps. We have to make sure rotation is correct, make sure the pumping level is adequate. But on well 6, if it's not rotating correctly, it'll start messing up the pump. So we noticed there was a little vibration. So that terms of rotating, maybe like a rod, or it's called a shaft that's maybe bent, but sometimes it evens out. So right now it's in the system, it's online. We're gonna test out for a week to troubleshoot it. The last thing you want to do is actually pull it. So we're doing our troubleshooting and last resorts. So 6 is back online. 7, as soon as it gets approval, they'll go back in and put that in. Just depends when they everything gets rebuilt. Like I say, we hope everything's perfect when they install it, but it's a lot of a lot of piping that they have installed in there and a lot of heavy equipment.
Then a lot of sampling too. Once it's back together, we pump it to waste and sample it twice. Has to pass twice before we can actually start using it again.
Okay.
So through the chair, well 6 is going through that testing.
It's back together. They started it up, as Mo mentioned, there was a vibration, so it's not good to go to commission and do the sampling in.
So right now they're both down.
Right now, they're both down out of service,
Gotcha.
which
Okay, so
our other 3 are fine this time of year. Can keep it, but
okay, so with that, I guess my concern, and it's not obviously these are the wells now that we've had the most urgency, but we've had other wells as well that have come before, and that's very expensive. I know you said a new well is over $1 million, and I know some of the costs for some of the other wells that we had issues with were over $1 million. because there was so much work that needed to be done. So I guess my concern is, I don't know if other cities go through the same thing that we do in terms of the well repairs, but what can we do, or what can we do to avoid that constant emergency repairs that are coming before us? And is there a possibility to have like a long-term preventative maintenance plan for the wells, so that we kind of anticipate, especially given some of them that have been in existence for 15 to 20 years, that at least we understand, here's what that preventative maintenance plan is gonna do, but here's the potential. So that way, at least as a council and as a city, we're aware of, some of the potential repairs that are needed to be made on a timely manner, or at least doing the preventative work to those that we know are gonna be more, that require more of the maintenance. I guess that's my concern is,
Through the chair, that I think the reason why these two wells have unfortunately come kind of side by side as an emergency is because they've been both offline together. And there's a fear that if a third well goes down, it could be very problematic to ensure service. Typically these wouldn't be an emergency. We would have maybe one well done at a time, and we would go through kind of the typical process, but it's just because of the nature of these two things coming together, at the same time, and then getting kind of more accurate estimates about what the cost would be to repair it. And I can let Don answer in terms of preventative maintenance, but that's why, hence the emergency, why we're coming kind of like this way.
Yeah, we don't want to be in a situation with 3 down. So the maintenance, we do all the prescribed maintenance that you can do for a well. We have to remember that, as Council Member Jimenez mentioned or asked, these wells are 600 to 900 feet deep. So most of the well is below ground. We can't video it unless it's out. So we check the temperature of the motor, we check vibration all the time, we make for shorts in the motor, and then we do a pump performance test. So when a pump's brand new, it's pumping perfect, we know how much it does. Every year or 2 years, we do a performance test on all the wells. Last time we did well 6, a rehab, is because it dropped to about 50% of performance. The impellers and the holes wear out that are 900 feet deep. So we also, I don't know if it's disturbances, if the hole's not perfectly straight, just vibration starts, and either bends a shaft, as Mo mentioned, or the impellers or the pump at the very bottom of the well wears out. If the motor goes bad, that's easy, that's above ground. But once you have a vibration or lose flow or performance, you have to pull the well out to troubleshoot it. You have to look at each shaft, each bushing. It's quite a process. My last agency, Marina Coast, we had 7 wells. It's the same situation. They're used a lot. It's like a car. If you drove 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's going to need a lot more maintenance than you would be expecting just driving it daily.
No, absolutely, but the cost of a car repair is not going to be the same as a well repair. So I take your point. So thank you for that. But I think for me, if we can have, I don't know if I've seen it done, maybe you have it already, but just a preventative well maintenance plan that we have for the future moving forward, given the situations of what we know already with our wells. That way we can anticipate what other types of repairs are going to be needed in the future, and that we're aware of that.
So we do have in our adopted 5-year CIP plan a well maintenance, removal, troubleshoot, upgrade, replacement every year. That's why we had $180,000 in this year's budget. So well 10 was slated to be done. That's the next one. 6 and 7 have been rebuilt in the last 5 years. 10 and 11 and 9 haven't. So 10 was next on our list, but you just never know. If the well gods were right, 10 would be the next one because it hasn't been rebuilt lately, but 6 and 7 develop problems. So
okay, yeah, well, if we can have that, and then I think that's a discussion for the mid-year budget as well, as we're looking at what's needed for the future. I think that's it's important for us to be able to understand kind of where we're at in that process of the maintenance for the wells.
we should have enough left in the mid-year budget to go ahead with well 10, as we did program for the complete replacement of our rebuilding of well 10, So we have funding, even though these 2 wells went down. If well 10 doesn't require a lot of maintenance, which we won't know till we get it out, we should be okay and back on schedule, so we can do 11 next year and 9 the year after that, and then come back to 7 and 6. As well as the reservoirs, booster stations, other.
Well, I think the plans are important, especially preventive maintenance, so thank you for bringing that back. Okay, Councilwoman Corralejo, did you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I did, and you covered some of them, so thank you. It was regarding preventive maintenance and then inspections, but I believe the mayor brought up preventive maintenance. You brought up inspection, so, you know, it does seem like we are doing some of that. I think for me, I was just, wondering when it comes to the preventive maintenance and inspections, is there like a binder that you guys keep where, let's say, you know, Megan or yourself can go in and you could see the history of the repairs or preventive maintenance that has been done?
So yes, at each well site, we keep a log. Each well site is visited daily because they check for chlorine levels, do a visual check for any, and take notice if it's drawing too many amps or things like that. So we have logs of every single day of the year that we looked and inspected. And then when we do a maintenance, even if we just add, fill up the chlorine tank, everything's logged at every well. So we have maintenance records. We're required by the state to go there every day and check the chlorine and visually check for any problems.
Thank you. And then another question that I have, that I think is real important when we see that, you know, they're, you said 15 or 20 years old and we're putting money into them for repairs. What is, I'm just curious what the shelf life or lifespan is of these wells, because I think that'll really, at least for me, it would help me decide, you know, make decisions when it comes to repairs or emergency repairs.
So a new well could easily last 20 plus years. Then once you start rebuilding them or replacing components, either the pump or the shaft or the columns or the spiders, things rust down there too, the screens. So it's not like when we, like 10's coming up, we pull it all out, we assess it, we don't replace everything, that'd be $1 million. Typically just the pump, some bearings, some seals, maybe some shaft components, and then back in. So the wear items are the pump and the motor. The rest of it should be good to go.
So it's reaching kind of its lifespan, it sounds like the end of its lifespan?
Most of our wells are at the 20-year age, so we just rebuild them after that.
Okay, and then I just have 2 more questions here. Earlier, I believe you said it was about 2 million to replace the well. Did I get that correct, or?
Yes, roughly 2 million. So Monte, the development to that's just in the process of annexing, they're gonna have to provide 3,000 gallons per minute, which would be roughly 2 wells depending on production. And we factored in 2 million a well is the approximate cost.
Okay, and then my last thing, it's more of a asking for clarification regarding well 7. I believe the mayor asked what the time frame was for repairing. I don't think I heard actual time frame, unless I missed it.
Okay, so Mo was saying, assuming it's approved tonight, we will order the parts and get on the schedule for as soon as Salinas Pump has an available crew and the parts in.
But we don't know that yet. We don't know the timeline yet.
Oh, they're readily available, which is a week to 2 weeks.
Okay, so I just wanted to thank you, and I appreciate, you know, all the information that you provided. I think it's important for us as well as it is to the public to know, and we don't all know well, so thank you so much for giving us that little education.
And Soledad's a little unique. We're the only city from Salinas to King City that owns and operates all phases of our water system. So we are certified operators, manage the wells, the sampling, the water quality, and everything. So it's a lot of work. Mo's our water manager, public works manager, and does a fantastic job. He really on it as soon as the well started showing issues. So we'll stay on top of it as well.
Well, thank you, Don. Given that our wells are getting old, I think it's more even crucial to be able to have that plan as we move along. And just for clarification, the 2 million to replace the wells, the new ones for the Miramonte, that's not encumbered by the city, right?
No.
Because that's on the
That's-
developer side and that would be a cost separate.
Wells, pipes, roads, they cover it all.
Got it. Okay, council.
Thank
So
you.
with that, if there's no other comments or questions, then there is a action in terms of resolution of approval of resolution number 6041.
I move to approve resolution number 6041.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so motion carries unanimously. Okay, so we'll look for the 2-week timeframe, hopefully where they can repair Ross 7. Okay, so we'll move on to item B-3, resolution number 6042, a joint resolution of the City Council of the City of Soledad and the City Council of the City of Soledad, acting as the Board of the Soledad Successor Housing Agency, authorizing funding and approving and authorizing the execution of a purchase and sale agreement between the City of Soledad and Gavilan Apartments LLC for a 4.564 acres of property located at 540 Gavilan Drive for the purchase price of $1.728 million. I will turn this over to our city manager.
Great, thank you. I probably don't need to talk too much about this because I know, this item came, for a letter of intent, on December 13th. But this is kind of the next step in the process to go ahead and move forward with the purchase of 540 Gavilan, Drive. We did, execute the letter of intent and we initiated an escrow account in which the city did put forward $10,000. We completed the appraisal and evaluated the appraisal. We have preliminary title report. The nice thing is since we opened the escrow account, we already have an escrow established. And so this would allow us to move forward with the purchase of the property at 540 Gavilan Drive. It's a little bit over 4.5 acres. The bulk of the funding would be coming from the Housing Successor Agency funds that have been sitting, I think, in that account for some time. The balance would come from reallocating ARPA funds. We're proposing to use a combination of interest and some funds from community and economic development based on the fact that we, at the time that the business support funding was allocated, we didn't have this CDBG award of $750,000 to provide business loans and support. So we're also, Mike and I are very concerned about making sure that our ARPA funds are expended because there are some really hard deadlines and one that is coming up where things actually have to literally be under contract before the end of this year. And I think we've had some discussions about making sure that we do that so that no ARPA funds are captured back from the federal government. And I don't know if Mike wanted to add a little bit more about the ARPA expenditures.
Good evening, council. Yes, regarding the ARPA, as Megan has mentioned, the concern we have is that we're under obligation to have the funds spent by December 31st of this year. That's our preference, right, is to have everything actually expended, paid for, the cash out the door. And the only caveat to that is the final regulations did come back and say, if you have a project that is under contract, you've committed the dollars, you then have an additional 2 years to December 31st of 2026. But that means an actual commitment to pay money. It does not mean a council action that says we want to allocate so much money for a specific project. So to give you an example, that would be, for example, the easiest thing to use is a public works project. We have another pipeline replacement that we have earmarked to fund with ARPA money. That means that item would be bid, presented to council, approved, and actually signed and under contract where the city is now obligated to pay those funds. And there would be significant penalties if we didn't. So as Megan has mentioned, there are some areas where, you know, where there's some concern that we may not be able to expend all of the money by December 31st, where we had allocated some money that would not be under contract. Some of those would be, you know, our facade program perhaps, or the business loan program, where, as Megan mentioned, at the time we allocated the funds, we didn't have the CDBG loan programs.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to be able to reallocate some things. Now, a year ago, well, actually more than a year ago, when interest rates started climbing, I initiated actually investing our money into our high yield money market account. And so far, the ARPA money has earned over $150,000. So there's additional funds that are accumulating, which is a good thing, but it's additional money that we have to spend. It still has the same requirements to spend it. And then we report to the federal government every March 31st. I have to present a report to the US Department of Treasury of what our projects are, what percentage they are completed, and they're looking at that. If you recall, a year ago, there was a lot of chatter when these reports were filed that perhaps there was going to be a grab for some of the ARPA money because a lot of jurisdictions hadn't actually spent the money per those reports. I'm pleased to say that we've spent quite a bit of the money now because of the well project that we've been doing, the Dixie line. But we have other projects that we have not committed yet, the kitchen and the additional well pipeline replacement that's planning to come before you, but we haven't committed those yet. So we need to make sure that we don't run it. We got $6.2 million. We don't want to return anything.
No, I'm sure you don't.
So, if any other questions?
Thank you, Mike, for that. We obviously do not want to return any of that money that came before us. And I just want to make a note of clarification. I want to take it out to the public. So housing is eligible. It's an expenditure that was eligible under the ARPA funds. I know this council and then council before us as well. We looked at what the needs were, obviously during the COVID pandemic. And because there was a high need for our businesses and being able to sustain them, I think there was where a lot of the allocation went into the business community, but we didn't have at that time, as you mentioned, all of the other funding that came through the state as part of the CDBG grant. So just want to make sure the public understands that and that housing is an eligible expense under the ARPA funds that were provided to the city. So with that, let me take it out to the public and then I'll bring it back to the council to see if there's any comments from the council. Any members of our public have any comments or questions on item B-3? Okay, seeing none. I'm sorry. I keep looking at our public that's here joining us in the chambers. Okay, any members of the public that are joining us via Zoom? Okay, seeing none. Then I'll bring it back to council if there's any questions or comments, and I will start with Councilwoman Corralejo.
Yes, I actually did have a question. I had actually reached out to our city manager earlier today, and so Mike, I thank you first of all for your clarification. So it sounds like we have some interest, but the interest is also on the same kind of expiration date. So I totally understand that. My question, I guess, is just I know that there was based on the monthly reports that we get from the different departments and from the economic department, there have been some applications that were being processed for both the grant and the small business loan. So I guess my question is, those applications that are still that were submitted by our businesses, are those still going to be processed, or what is gonna happen with them?
So I think what we're looking to do is we do have this other source of the CDBG funds to kind of look through those applications and see, you know, what the criteria is and if they would be eligible. I know that, there were some, discussions about using this source of funding, but pretty, early on when we had some discussions about this property, I did ask that those be placed on hold because I think, we were looking at ways of using, I think, you know, ARPA funds, to cover the balance. So there's nothing approved. I guess the bottom line is nothing has been approved in terms of officially approved or contracted. It's just, I think, projects have been reviewed, so we can take a look at those. I mean, we definitely want to support small businesses and see where we can shift them towards the CDBG funds or look at other opportunities. We do have a little bit of CDBG too that in program income that we can also evaluate as well.
And then, the grant that we were awarded, I do recall we were awarded a grant, I don't recall it was 700 or 750,000. Is that something that can be used for the pending applications that are sitting there right now from businesses?
Yeah, for the business loan program, we would shift as many of them to that opportunity. And then, like I said, we could look at other sources. We do have a small, I think it's, Mike may remember, but I think we have like 30,000 of CDBG program income, something of that we can also evaluate for those programs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, there was a couple of those items were, what I had as well is that, can the CDBG, grant satisfy those or be able to meet those obligations of those grants for the small businesses? So that sounds like it is, that they'll be able to cover that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will mention that Mike and I are going to be coming back probably in March to council with a report card on how we're doing for ARPA funds. And there's an opportunity to look at the whole piece. And if you feel like these applications are further along, and other sources of funds, I know that Stephen and I had a conversation about some funds he probably will have unspent. We can make additional shifts at that time if you feel strongly that some of it needs to go back to economic development.
Yeah, and those are some of my questions with that, the revitalization or the addition of the village container downtown and moving forward on that. Some of the things that we're trying to do downtown to attract more businesses, to bring in, you know, retail, in addition to establishing a tax base to support, you know, fire department, police department, finance department, economic development department, all those guys. So it's critical that we do that, but also, you know, keep in mind that we have a certain amount of time in order to do that. So therefore, we need to move forward. And again, it's critical for staff to prioritize this and for council to prioritize these things so that we meet those deadlines and we're able to, you know, we're not gonna give any money back. You know, as long as I'm sitting there, we're not gonna give any money back, right, to the state. And then also because too, they have a shortfall as well, state or federal. They have our state is looking at a potential, you know, 58 million, some used to be 38 million, billion shortfall. So that's one of the issues. So just want to make sure that we're not pulling from any of those areas that we've already identified, and that we will have an opportunity to look at the money that's currently not being utilized and then make a determination as a council to say where we can do that. Because I think this project's an excellent project, and I think that, you know, you gotta give you know, credit to the council, to Andy, Megan, for you know, thinking through this and figuring out a win-win situation for our community and for our housing needs as well. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for your comments. I just, for me, really just brief as well. I support this project. Obviously, there is a housing shortage that we have, and we're not an exception. All of California is facing that, but I think for us, it's important to be able to look at what we have not done and looking at our RENA numbers. Although we develop housing and we continue to see construction of housing, it's really not meeting those deeper income levels that I think it's really important for us to address, and not just, it's obviously the right thing to do to meet the needs of our citizens and our residents, but it also comes as we're in the 6th cycle of RENA and our numbers have doubled to 700 and some that we have to meet under the various categories. And so we already know we've had shortfalls in the past in our RENA numbers under specific, the lower income housing units. So I think this gives us an opportunity as a city to really take on driving that, driving the bus to be able to ensure that we're the ones that are able to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community to satisfy the state regulation, but also to satisfy the needs of our residents. So I just want to also go back in terms of the CDBG funding. If we can also get an update from our consultant, Johnston.
Angel Johnson.
Angel Johnston, yes, in terms of, because I know when we approved the ARPA funding, as I said, there was a lot of support to our businesses. So I just want to be clear, at least from my end, that I know that our businesses have been supported through different various funding sources, and ARPA under economic development was actually one of the biggest besides public works, right? Because we had infrastructure projects that needed to be completed and we didn't have the funding source. So the second highest was economic development, and a lot of it went into the different portions of what we wanted to see happen. But I know from that, there's been, as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, that we put in some money and investments to really upgrade the facade of Front Street, and we haven't really seen a lot of that movement. There's been some projects here and there, but there was a lot more that I think this council had asked and requested in terms of Front Street. So maybe some of that is not working out, and we got to look at, how do we utilize that funding to make sure that it's being spent the way we wanted it to be spent, and that is really making that impact to Front Street. And that those funding sources are spent on a timely manner. And so the federal government, obviously, if we don't spend them by the criteria, the timeline, they will pull the money. And so we want to make sure that we have that report card. I think it'll be good, so the council can evaluate what other funding sources do we need to reallocate. Are the projects on time? Will they meet the year criteria timeline? Will we be able to commit those dollars by 2026? And if we're not, then we have to make decisions of where the money needs to be invested to be able to be a well investment, but also that is supporting a need in the community. So with that, I just thank you, Megan, again for bringing this project to us. That I think it's really important as a city to think outside of the box in terms of how we deliver housing. So I totally am in support of resolution 6042. I'd like to make a motion, if there's no additional comments, to support resolution number 60, to approve resolution number 6042.
Through the chair, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I just want to do one last comment since you did ask if anyone had a last comment. And I just wanted to say, I also, I'm for the project. We definitely need housing. I think, to me, I just, want to make sure that, I think we all want to see our Front Street corridor, it's our living, we want to see it vibrant. I think we're headed in that way, but then we did have some hits when it came to our department, our staffing. We were probably working with a skeleton crew for a few months, and then, Megan, you've been with us for 6 months, so that hasn't been that long, and it's just been, kind of you trying to do everything. So, I'm really excited again about Canoe being with us, and now that we have a full department also with Beatrice in the housing, hopefully we could have the time now to really do some outreach to, for businesses, for housing, for everything that our, economic development department covers. So I'm honestly excited to have a full staff and want to see, what can we do now?
Okay, so Megan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we can take a critical look at where we are with all of the funding and come back with a report card. And then you'll have the opportunity with ARPA funds of reallocating it to priority projects. We are totally 100% focused on Front Street, so I'm glad that you brought that up. We have the maintenance project that Public Works is undertaking that this council had the foresight to put Measure X money towards, and we're actually looking at ways that we can create the vibrancy and the splash along Front Street, whether it's through facades or public art. So I did ask Canoe to prioritize that. So we'll be coming back to you with some thoughts to achieve what you're asking.
Yeah, but thank you. And Megan, I think for me, I just want to say on that note, though, because I know we had lengthy discussions before with the council in regards to the downtown and when we approved the facade, is really looking at what we already have in the existing specific, the downtown specific plan. I mean, I know that there's elements that are outdated, but there was some elements from that specific downtown maintenance plan that was the vision for what Front Street wanted to look like. And so I think including that as well with any other updates is important. So, okay, so with that, there is a motion on the floor, or so I made the first.
Second.
Okay, there's a second.
And through the chair, I just did want to remind everybody that the council in voting this evening is actually representing two different agencies. We have a joint resolution, and so you are representing the city council, and then the city council is also the governing board of the successor housing agency. So just needed to note that for the record, that your vote here counts for both of those entities.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so with that, there's a motion on the floor. And just as a reminder, I took it out to the public at the beginning, correct? Yes, I did. Okay, good. I want to make sure that we don't skip that piece. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Megan, so much for that. So we will move on to item B-4, consideration of a proposed partnership with the County of Monterey to apply for the encampment resolution funding, round 3, the ERF-3 program from the California Interagency Council of Homelessness for the Salinas River Soledad encampment. So I will turn this over to Megan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. I'm going to have Darlene bring up the PowerPoint presentation. I did also want to acknowledge that Roxanne Wilson, who's the Homeless Services Director, is also on the line and able to make comments, or I will invite her to make some comments at the end. I worked with Roxanne before. She used to be the executive director of the Coalition for Homeless Services Providers, and has been working with the county for the better part of more than a year, and has been doing a lot. I think the county has kind of focused more than it ever has on the provision of homeless services and getting resources, especially to South County. I think looking to make sure that that all the resources aren't concentrated in Salinas or in the peninsula. So I just wanted to provide a little overview. This is an item for consideration and feedback direction. I should start by saying that the actual applicant for the encampment resolution grant would not be the city, but would be the county. And we're looking to partner with the county because we feel that the success of this encampment resolution funding program, if awarded, really depends on cooperation, not only between the two jurisdictions, but also service providers that would be attached to a grant if awarded. So in 2022, the state established the Encampment Resolution Fund. They're now on perhaps the third and last round of funding for this purpose. The reason for the Encampment Resolution Fund is to actually assist local jurisdictions in ensuring the safety and wellness of encampments resolving the critical concerns of the surrounding community and actually transitioning these individuals into safe and stable housing, and using a data-informed, coordinated approach to encampment concerns. And this means, you know, actually doing a census of who's in the encampment and to work with individuals one by one to actually result in permanent housing. So the third round of encampment resolution funding, the window for applying is on February 1st. So the county is hoping to submit an application on January 31st. The county has has hired a grant writer to help them with the report. And this is an individual who has been successful in working with other jurisdictions to receive funding, and has stressed that the likelihood of an application receiving funding that's submitted after February 1st is very low. So she basically has told us we have to move forward. I'm sorry, go if you don't mind going back. We haven't finalized the budget yet. It's still under development, but we're probably looking in the 4 to 6 million range. And when I say we, I really mean the county, because the county would be the lead applicant. But because we're in conversation with them, I feel it's a we. So when I say we, I mean really the county. Okay, next slide. So the purpose and what encampment resolution funds can be used for is pretty broad. It can be used for rapid rehousing. It can be used for operating subsidies for any type of shelter or interim housing. It can be used for street outreach. It can be used for coordination of services, providing system support, delivery, actually building or acquiring permanent housing, prevention and diversion. That means preventing someone who's at risk for becoming homeless, interim sheltering, improvements to existing systems, and administrative costs. And really what it is again, it's resolving the critical issues of an encampment, demonstrating that there is a large encampment and showing how you're going to resolve those issues. Next slide. So as I stated before, we're looking to get council consideration of joining in partnership with the county. The county CAO's office, which is the chief administrative officer, and it would be the lead, and they have taken on homelessness at that level to make sure that there's a better coordination of resources across the departments. We would be working again, like I said, directly with Homeless Services Director, who's online. And I kind of talked a little bit about what the purpose of the encampment resolution funding, which is to literally address this encampment so that in the future we don't have an encampment right at our city door. There was a meeting on November 29th. Monterey County did an input session on homelessness. About 30 participated. That input session was at the community center in Soledad. And many of the folks mentioned specifically this encampment and working to address the needs at the encampment. The county also has conducted an online survey, and a lot of people in that survey have responded that there's additional needs and services in South County. And then CSU MB, the CHE program has done outreach to the encampment, along with, I must admit, our police department and our fire CAL FIRE have been out there numerous times. They know the individuals and we kind of know what we're talking about. Many of the people who have been talked to directly have indicated that they are interested in assistance and help. Next. So the proposed use of funds for this particular project really stem along street outreach. So that would be to continue to engage the folks that are in the encampment, case management of the encampment residents, understanding what the shortcomings are of their needs to get housing and to get services. Could be transportation, could be they don't have IVs, so that would result in health support and access and basic needs support. So literally it could be the case manager, help someone go to DMV to get the license they need in order to put in an application for housing. Housing navigation, again, is actually literally helping people with their housing goals and helping them apply for housing opportunities, get rental subsidies. Landlord incentives would be to provide a landlord incentive who may be uncomfortable housing someone who is coming especially directly from homelessness. So it could be providing double deposits, and then rental subsidy would be, as it sounds, rent. And then lastly, administration is obviously a small component of what the grant would also be used for, because there are staff requirements. But lastly, the conversation that I wanted to bring up here is there needs to be a component of interim housing. And the reason why we need to kind of think this through is to address the encampment under a decision of Boise, the Boise decision, in order to kind of enforce no camping in public areas. You need to have some options of where people can go. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, go back one, just as an FYI, California has actually had success with the encampment resolution program, and has contributed a considerable amount, 715 million, and has removed 5,679 encampments and has helped an estimated 23,000 people out of encampment. So we've seen success in this effort. Okay, next. So I just wanted to go over, in the proposal, we do need to outline how we're going to address housing for the encampment residents. And there are 3 options to consider, and they all have pros and cons. So, and I think what I'm seeking is a permission or, approval of working with the county on this effort, but also some direction on interim housing options. Option 1 would be looking at our local motels and getting a lease for about 20 to 24 local motel rooms. The pros are it's a fast ramp up. It would be a lower initial cost than building interim housing. The cons are that we really only have 2 hotels in our town. There's a high occupancy rate. It could result in loss of TOT revenue, which is pretty significant for our city. And there's some concern about mixing encampment residents with visitors, whether or not that would generate a lot more calls to police and fire, and if it's harder for them to monitor. Of course, they will always do their best to respond to calls and help out with that. The next option, number 2. A second option is, we could do an interim housing, option at 90 Los Coches Road. We show where that is on the map. The pros are, it's a little bit easier for the PD and CAL FIRE to manage and monitor. If they do get service calls, they're always going to the same, or not always, but you know, the calls will be to that location. It is temporary and removable. The location is fairly removed from sensitive areas, and the zoning wouldn't allow for that to be a permanent housing site. So, you know, again, it would be temporary. The cons is it requires a lot of site improvements. It's going to be expensive for initial setup, and you know, will tax some of the service resources. And there's a longer lead time before it can be used. So, you know, you might be having people still in the encampment for a year before this is ready to go. Okay, next. And then option 3 is essentially leaving the encampment more or less in place, doing a good job of identifying who's in the encampment today, and not really allowing more people to come into the encampment, and focus on mostly directly housing people to permanent housing from the encampment. The pros are that more resources go to the solution, more resources go to case management services. We do have actually many encampment residents who are probably pretty close to housing ready, and some even have assigned vouchers. And we have a fairly robust housing pipeline. The cons are that the encampment would remain until we've been able to pluck through all of the residents who've been housed. The encampment residents are still vulnerable to flooding and displacement because many of them are private property. So a private property owner could enforce their rules. One thought is if option 3 is the option, that there still may be some level of motel vouchers to allow for, if we have some people in the flood areas or whatever, we could still shift some people to the motel areas, or people who might be harder to place into housing. And the next slide. Really the recommendation is we're hoping that council sees that this is a good opportunity to partner with the county so that they can apply for the funding, and we can make sure that the program is implemented in a way that doesn't negatively impact the city and is successful. And we're looking for some direction on the interim housing options. And with that, I wanted to see if we could, if Mayor's okay, Roxanne Wilson is online from the county, if she could make a few comments as well.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Roxanne, and then we'll take it out to the public, and then we'll get back to the council.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I truly appreciate this opportunity to present this collaboration on resolving the encampment that has impacted the surrounding communities for too long. And most importantly, the opportunity to serve the people who are experiencing homelessness in our shared jurisdictions. As mentioned, the county deployed outreach to meet the occupants and get an understanding of how they fell into homelessness and if they were even interested in resolving it. And through that engagement, we have learned that the vast majority of the occupants have fallen into homelessness due to unresolvable issues with their families. But they are very much interested in housing, and they also want to help us build a program that would be most impactful for program participants. We heard earlier your new director say that small community superpower is collaboration. And I would like to emphasize that in my experience, the most effective programs are done in partnership and in collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including people with lived experience. Not one entity has enough resources and capacity to do this alone, but together we can certainly go far. I thank the city for your commitment to this social issue, which you demonstrated when you adopted the Lead Me Home 5-year plan to address homelessness. And also through all of the various meetings that I've had with your chief and your city manager, your staff there are incredible, incredible people. While we can't guarantee that this proposal will be funded by the state, we do know that all of the steps that we are taking here today and shows the commitment and collaboration that the state is looking for. And also the 3 options that were presented to the council are proven models that have been funded in previous rounds of encampment resolution funding. We're considering the 7 principles to address encampments that was published by the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness just 2 years ago. And we've also leveraged the expertise of many other jurisdictions. So again, I thank you so much for your time. I'm honored to have this time with you, and I'm here to answer any questions you have regarding the 3 proposed structures, or even like examples or my experience with encampment resolution funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you for all the work that you've done as your, now with the county, obviously in the small time that you've been there, a lot of changes, but also as part of your role as the executive director for the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers. Extraordinary work on this front, so thank you so much. Okay, so with that, let me take it out to the public to see if there's any comments from the public, and then I'll bring it back to council for discussion on this item. Members from the public that are joining us here in our chambers, if there's any members of the public that have any comments on item B-4. Okay, seeing none, then take it out to those that are joining us via Zoom. Oh, okay, sorry. So let me go back via Zoom afterwards. So we do have a member of the public that wishes to speak, and thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you. Wes Wise, Salinas Minor County Homeless Union co-president. And I'm a little concerned about the way this is going. I mean, I want to make sure that there's 100% success rate for everybody in the encampment being placed in the housing or whatever. So that you don't have them just going somewhere else and then going, well, you can't be here either. You know, stopping the cycle is certainly the biggest issue. So the success rate of how it went in Salinas that I know of in the Encampment Resolution Fund, the first time was 25 out of 27 people. But then there was one at Car Lake and nobody was placed, and 8 million went to the ground, the land, the contractors. So I just want to make sure that people are being placed and the money is actually being used in a positive direction.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, any additional comments from those that are joining us in the chambers? Okay, seeing none, then I'll take it out to those that are joining us via Zoom. Okay, seeing none, then I'll bring it back to the council for discussion on this item. So I will open it up to the council members that have any comments on this item, and I have comments, but I'll reserve my comments till the end.
I'll go ahead and start then. Thank you, Roseanne and Megan, for the presentation. You know, unfortunately, we are in the state that, I mean, not just literally the state of California, but the state of situation where homelessness is occurring in all communities, and therefore the need to address it. Having previous experience in working with the homeless population and overlooking many homeless or programs from Monterey County, actually from South Santa Clara County down to Ventura County, to include Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and those areas as well. It's something that's not going away, but how do we address it, and how do cities and counties address this so that we meet the needs? There's a need out there, but it's simply not just a need of housing. The individuals that are needing of these, that are homeless, that need the housing, also have other issues as far as mental health issues, substance abuse issues, health issues that need to be addressed as well. And so therefore, having to be able to facilitate that and provide that to them is very complex and costly within itself, and to ensure that that all these services, which we tend to call wraparound services, are available just not only the housing portion of it. And the other part of it is that the individual, my experience has been as well, is that many times individuals that are homeless don't want to move into that housing because of the fact of the rules, the restrictions, that, are placed for them to be there. So, it's a complex issue. At least we're looking to address, presently, our situation. And although, the encampment actually is in the county on private property, right? So, Boise versus Martin doesn't really apply to us. It's not that I know of, just because of the fact it's not the cities, and the county would be the one obligated to find placement for them. Now, if those individuals moved into the city, that'd be a different story as well. But nonetheless, it still needs to be addressed, because it is, our services are going out there, our police department, our fire departments are having to address those issues. Our city staff are dealing with those as well. And so, myself, I believe there was, Roxanne, if I may, wasn't there a census done today on the, counting or,
Point in time count is not.
Yeah, it's
wasn't
not,
today, it's been-
it's on January, 31st.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was hoping we were gonna get good numbers, because originally, there were 12, and I know, when it first started, and my understanding is it's up to 30, 35 now. So, and it seems as though, you know, did ours grow, or did other people move into that encampment? We don't know until the consensus done, and obviously get an opportunity to talk to the individuals that are impacted by the homelessness. And so, looking at an option of the three of them, I hate to see us tie down our property there where we're expanding our retail base and limiting that property on Los Coches, because one, have the marketplace right there. Two, we have limited spaces for retail to build a temporary or what'd you call it, an encampment village for the homeless. So we'd be locking down that property for a little bit of time, whether it's temporary, a year or more, might limit us in our ability to, meet the needs of a potential employer or retail business that want to be placed there. Also, it's in close proximity to the older part of town, which is 8th Street. You just cross the tracks over right there, you're in 8th Street. And I understand that there's going to be, in this program, there'll be security, there'll be caseworkers, but they're still free to, and obviously they're free to come and go as they please. So we need to address that as well, because we see it already on over at the marketplace, they're CVS, and majority of them tend to not bother anybody, but there are the few that are bothering people. So I would like to see something, or we find something that we're able to deal with the issue of our people that are displaced and are in need of some help, and to help them, but also at the same time recognizing the other needs of the city and the other citizens in our community as well. So those are my thoughts, man.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Councilwoman Corralejo.
Yes, first of all, I wanted to thank Roxanne and Megan for all the work that went into this, and also the chief and both of our chiefs over there. I'm sure both of you had a lot of input for her. And I actually wanted to request that I could get the slideshow emailed to me, please. There was a lot of good information on there, so thank you for that. For me, I'm happy to see that we're doing something, that we have some kind of plan, or at least we have the conversation going. To me, it really stood out when we did the first, I think it was like a workshop that we did where we invited the community. I don't recall if Megan was with us. I think it was it, because I think he left early, if I remember right. But that was when we first introduced the Take Me Home program. the 5-year plan, and, you know, to me, it really stood out when they said that, you know, people living out in the encampment is not a dignified, you know, way to live, whether they realize it or not, it's not. You know, and it's also, not safe, it's not sanitary, not just for them, but, you know, the water's there, the riverbed is there. And so, you know, with that said, I'm glad that, you know, we're doing, something about it. I really would like to see, you know, a plan more, you know, more structured, like if this does go through, what are we gonna do? What does the day-to-day property management look like? You know, who's gonna pay for the utilities? I don't know if, you know, when you say we, does that mean the county's also gonna help us to pay for utilities and, you know, different programs or, you know, just the basics that you need to run a facility like that, maybe landscaping, if there's landscaping, you know, different things. Trying to think what else.
And I probably should clarify, and I apologize that I didn't, I think the idea is the grant would cover the cost of whatever services are provided. And the county would oversee the grant, we would be a partner, in, you know, providing some of the support we already do, which is, public safety.
So these modular units, they look fairly small. Is this gonna be something that's open to families? Because I know that unfortunately we do have some families that stay sometimes in their vehicles, like in their vans and, you know, our shopping centers. Is this gonna be open to them or is this only for single individuals or couples?
Yeah, so the idea is for the families that we would actually, we would have funding set aside to put them directly into housing. Cause they're pretty houseable, but that if option, the Los Coches option was chosen, we would have that for setup for individuals and couples, cause it's not really, like you said, suitable for families.
Yeah. Okay, and then I think another just general concern that I have is that if I recall correctly, I think about a year ago when we had all that flooding going on down there, I want to say almost every city council member went down there at one point or another to offer food services, blankets or whatnot. And I recall that back then, I think we were down to like only 7 or 8 individuals that were living there at the riverbed, and now I believe we're up to 30. So, you know, that's something, I guess, that to me is a concern. Also, I don't understand why the growth that happened, but I guess that'll be in the census. Once that comes up, we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually done some, through the chair, I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in. We have done some, outreach, not just, Che, but also the police department and fire department. And there's some people that came from Greenfield after the Caltrans cleanup occurred. And there's some people that came from Salinas. What my understanding is they came from industrial because of not feeling safe there, a handful of people. So I think it's about 8 to 10 people that may have come from other places, but the rest I think are local, and I could defer to the chief of police if that's his understanding of roughly what we're talking about in terms of people from Salinas and Greenfield.
And Megan, just to clarify, there is that point in time, council, I know we're gonna have updated numbers on the 31st. So I'm planning I registered to be part of the count on that day to ensure we have, at least for me, I have the proper kind of information in terms of who we're seeing out in the riverbed and other areas of our city. So I encourage the council if they wish to participate in that is open as well.
Yeah, and what the city manager said was correct. Some of these folks are being displaced from other locations and they're finding their way down to us, and we're running into quite a few folks from Salinas. And the folks that were displaced from Greenville, so they're mixing with our local residents down there, and they're kind of, it's getting to the point where they're kind of separating themselves into different little groups down there. So we have our folks, and then we have the Greenville folks off to themselves, and then the Salinas folks off to themselves. So it's kind of a mix, as they're being displaced from someplace else than here.
I was gonna say also, Megan, is there a way that we could prioritize our Soledad homeless individuals when we get the modular units? Like, is that something that we can do where we prioritize our residents, our unsheltered residents versus
The county.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the county. I think our intention is to get to get a census and to work with all of the individuals. And so there might be some people from Greenfield or King City or perhaps Salinas, maybe in the temporary housing, but the benefit is we might also get access to resources in Salinas or in King City for those individuals. There's, maybe some of the people, for example, Salinas operates an emergency motel program. Maybe some of the Salinas folks we can, or the county, I should say, could fund them to be in that area. Same with Greenfield. We can look at ways. We have to look at the encampment as a whole and work with the encampment as a whole, but it also gives us the opportunity to work with those jurisdictions to get resources for residents that may be from there and want to go back. That sometimes many of them do want to be back in that area that they're from because they have those connections.
And probably the decision is going to be made at a different level, but as far as we're concerned, the health and safety of the folks down there, that's I think our main concern. And we might want to start with the most vulnerable, whether they be in King City, Greenfield, whatever, moving them out first, especially before the weather really hits and the rain really hits and all that kind of stuff. So that would be my preference would be to start with the most vulnerable and work our way up from there.
Thank you, Chief, on that. Any further questions? Okay. Yeah, and thank you, Chief, on that note. So for me on my comments, and thank you for bringing this forward. And I know it was mentioned, I know Roxanne has her hand up, so I'll allow her to, make sure that if you want to wait until I have my comments, because I might have additional questions for you, and then that way you can respond to all of the council's concerns at one time. I think that would probably be best. So I think for me, I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward. I know there's obviously a lot of concerns anytime you come. I mean, we've heard this over and over with housing and homelessness, right? People want it, but we just don't want it in our backyard, or we just don't want that to happen here. I know when I came to this council several years ago as a city councilwoman, we already had people living in the river. And I remember the first time I went out there to talk to the people in the river, and I was really horrified, and more for me that as a citizen, I wasn't aware that this was happening just in our area. And even though it's not within our jurisdiction, it still impacts our city services and our resources, and the calls for services that we get in our businesses, right? So I think it's imperative that we really look at it as, how do we partner with the county to be able to address this? Because it is, as Chief said, a matter of health and safety. And I think that should be a priority, whether it's one person or whether it's 30, every person deserves the same dignified type of housing. So for me, I want to say thank you for bringing it to us and giving us options. When we adopted the plan for the Lead Me Home that the county had put together, I think the concept was that we would adopt a plan, we would review some of those elements that were specific of how can we partner, what can we do? And this gives us an opportunity to be able to look at a funding source. We don't even know whether that funding source will be awarded to our city or not. But I think for us, it's important as leaders to be able to look at opportunities that we have to address some of these concerns. And we wouldn't be taking away money from our residents and meeting the needs of our residents, because it's not coming from our general fund budget. It's coming from a funding source that's available now, may not be available later, given some of the, as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, there is a deficit of 38 billion at the state level, and housing and homelessness is on one of those budget cuts, right? So I think if we have this funding source, being able to look at what can we do until we find that viable long-term solution for our residents. And I'll just share for me, and having talked to many of them, we have more, as was mentioned, we have a lot of families. We have a lot of families with children that are living in their cars, and they're just, a car away from being homeless and living out in the river as well. And many of the residents, there may be one or two that may not want the help, but I think the majority are. And I think my concern also, as we're coming to start the agriculture season here, what I saw before, and the people that I've talked to in the past, they're working. They have a car, but live in a river because they can't afford to live here, but they have a car and they go to work and they come back and they live in the river. And I think those folks are, would take the help and I believe it's important to prioritize also the most vulnerable as well. So, but this gives us an opportunity to be able to look at what can we do? We've had multiple workshops, we've had multiple surveys, and a lot of our residents are expecting us to be able to try to do something. Before, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the budget, we were looking at what can we do. Now we have an opportunity to look at a funding source that can give us a potential solution. And it's now deciding, which of those solutions that are presented to us is the most viable in terms of what we want to see happen, and helping people to get to where they need to be and to really, live a dignified life in terms of their housing stability, and making sure that we're being part of the solution and not part of the challenge. So for me, I think in terms of the recommendations that were presented, I would like to see kind of us moving forward with option 2, which looks at Los Cochis property only because it is temporary. And I know in terms of the long-term sustainability of housing, we can't do long-term sustainability of housing because that's not what it's zoned for. In the meantime, as we're growing our commercial and retail, we've seen some of these properties have been there for years and there has not been much going on. So I think it gives us an opportunity. We don't get tied down to the property because we're not saying we're going to utilize it. And I don't anticipate that in a year, hopefully we will find someone, but I don't anticipate with these properties that have been there for many, many years vacant, that we try to do something with the property that has been there longstanding for years and nothing has happened, to see how we can utilize that property with the proper mechanisms to be able to ensure that the safety and welfare of those residents, but also of our residents in the perimeters, are also taken into account, and that we're factoring that in as we're looking at this specific property. My only question in terms of the recommendation on option number 2 is, once we have because it's not permanent, like how long can that be temporary until we find the housing? And this obviously, when we talk about homelessness, this also comes with wraparound services, right? So it's not just housing, it's all these other services that are important to those individuals. So my question on that would be, what is the time frame for us to be able to support these families, get them out of the river, and then transition them into permanent housing or other type of housing that's suitable for them? So those are my comments, my question. So Roxanne, I know you had your hand up before, so do you want to go ahead and provide comments on some of the items that you heard from our council members?
Sure, absolutely. It is a normal practice in homeless services for us to consider the vulnerability of individuals and make sure that they get priority for the programs and services that we're offering. So we could absolutely implement that practice into this project. You know, there's also one of the things that a report had recently come out on is when you significantly reduce the needs of people who are experiencing homelessness, in general, crime does go down in that surrounding area. So as soon as I can find that report, I'll be happy to forward it to Megan so she could share with the council on some of those findings and how it has had positive impacts on the needs for city services like police and fire. The tiny villages, there's been a lot of developments in the structures. And one of the product that we're using on the project that we have in partnership with the County of Santa Cruz for Pajaro, those ones have high fire ratings. It's the highest that is available in the industry. I can't guarantee that that's the product that we would use because we would clearly have to go through the RFP process, but that is something we would take into serious consideration when selecting the products. I would also like to say that in the product that we're using in the Santa Cruz County partnership is they have a 20-year lifespan. We would probably fund about 2.5 years of operations because it does take time for us to do the RFP and find the developer and everything of that sort. But that, of course, does include services and also extends on into possibly rental assistance for individuals to help transition them into the lifestyle of having to pay rent again. The products that we are proposing in option 2 are movable. We would work with the city to identify like ownership of those units. And if the city were to determine that you wanted to keep those units, you could clearly use them for anything that you need to use them for in the future. So that's something for you to take into consideration. The alternate option is if the county were to own them, we could remove them. And of course, that would be included in the budget, the final expenses for moving them. Finally, something that is good to mention is since I've gotten to the county, I've really started implementing the good neighbor policy practice. So that is essentially when the organization that we hire to operate, they have a policy on how they address neighborhood concerns, how they work with individuals so they're not camping within a certain range of their unit, the program site. And also like just how are they going to create community groups with the neighbors so that they have open communication and they're aware when any of their clients are allegedly, causing issues in the community. So I do hope that answered all of your questions. And again, I'm still here if you have any further.
Thank you, Roxanne. So just in terms of the properties, because I want to make sure this is clear, the property restrictions then would be for a period of, you have operation costs to fund for 2.5 years. So would it be a 2 to 3 year timeframe commitment?
That is correct. The ERF is a 3-year grant.
Okay.
And we have not identified any funding sources that would be able to keep the project alive past those 3 years.
Okay.
Through the chair, for me, for Roxanne. Roxanne, on option 3, tell me the option with that one, as far as the funding and getting them into places that are livable right away. And then secondly, you had mentioned about permanent housing. My experience has been is then we worked with the county, with the housing authority to get them on the list. And I don't know if you sound as though that there will be funding also for permanent housing?
Yes, there are several different types of permanent housing interventions that we would introduce as a possible outcome for folks. There are special vouchers called the homeless set-aside vouchers, which only authorized organizations can have access to. So we would work with the coalition and the housing authority to get our selected provider eligible to use those vouchers. There's also CalAIM, which is a gigantic state initiative with billions of dollars that is helping with rental assistance for up to 6 months for individuals who are qualified on Medi-Cal. So there's and clearly, the regular, housing authority pipeline, there's permanent supportive housing projects that are popping up. We have behavioral health bridge housing, which is getting built in Marina for those who are too acute and require, further mental health assistance. The county is currently have an RFP out, so that we're hoping to open that up within the upcoming months as well. So yeah, there's lots of options, and I am very positive at, or I don't know, it's the word I'm looking for, it's getting late, but I'm encouraged that we can help the vast majority of folks that's in there. And I think the big thing is that they do want it. If they didn't want it, we would have walked away and moved on, because there's several other encampments within the county that we could be focusing on.
Excellent. And one other question. So with the option 3, wouldn't that be the quickest route into getting them into some type of, housing or it's lack of housing, but, apartment or a hotel room? Wouldn't that be quicker, and we could prioritize those that you need most, the families and those type, quicker than waiting to, once we get the funding, waiting to go out to bid for an RFP and then for building of these structures?
That is correct. I think option number 3 would likely be the fastest one, but as we mentioned, we would want some motel vouchers in there. The weather has clearly been not very nice to us, so we just want to make sure that we have options for folks when there's inclement weather.
Inclement weather, yes, and then also that would also include the wraparound services at those facilities as well, right? It could still be provided with a case manager. Is that correct, Roxanne?
Oh, I'm back. Sorry, my computer froze. Yes, it would include wraparound services, housing navigation, rental assistance, quite a few other services.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. And Roxanne, my question in regards to option 2, it would include the same, right? We still have the wraparound services, we still have access to the housing navigation, with the exception of the vouchers, right? Because those wouldn't be needed. But my experience with the vouchers, and I know they come far and few between, and I know even for obviously it's inclement weather is pretty defined in terms of when that's gonna happen, but we've had incidents where they're limited and to those vouchers. And if we're talking about vouchers, that means that you'd secure vouchers from our existing motels. So you'd enter into those contracts with those motels for those units to be available when the vouchers are needed. And I mean, I guess just my concern in terms of when those would be available and if they would be available, given that 80% of our 80 to 85% of our hotels, the 2 that we have, are fully occupied, 80 to 85% of the time.
Yeah, the hard part about vouchers is how quickly we would have to move to execute an agreement with a hotel. There's also the issue, I don't think any of us like closing the doors and saying, okay, your 5 days is up, you have to go back outside. So there's certainly some cons with using temporary vouchers, but I think that just becomes the question of like, where are we prioritizing our limited resources?
Thank you, Roxanne. And then I have just another question, because you're right, in terms of the temporary vouchers, I've had experiences where I think, many of the people that I've come in contact with do live here. And I know I have to say thank you to Liberty Chapel, because they've supported with giving vouchers to families that have needed the assistance. But again, I think, the hard piece for me is that the resources are limited. So even if we say, hey, we're going to have these other resources under option 3, I had experience with families where I had to tell them, go to the Salinas Navigation Center, and we're calling all the different providers in the county to look for housing, and there is no availability. And even most recently with some of families that were living in a car, the resources that were available were, most of the places that I called, especially those shelters, for families up in in the Monterey area, they were busy, I mean, they were packed and they weren't taking any more people. And so for me, it's, you know, what is a solution that's gonna provide our families with an opportunity to get housed, get the help that they need and get them out of those circumstances, so they don't have to no longer be there. And I think for me, the option 2 presents that opportunity, because we don't have to be relying on other resources to be available. The navigation center, I mean, you guys did an amazing job, but that's packed. The other center in Salinas was packed when we called. The other center in Monterey, the women's gathering, the women's place for gathering, which is a really, you know, family location as well. All those places were full and they couldn't take our families. So it's having to say to our families that have children. And for me as a mother, it was really hard to look at the moms with a 12-month-old baby and others with a three-year-old baby and a 12-year-old daughter, and saying, I'm sorry, but we don't have any resources that are available to house you currently. You have to continue to be living under these circumstances. So, I mean, for me, I think we have an opportunity as a council to be able to look at options that are going to be viable and that we can be part of the solution, and not necessarily having to rely on some of the other resources that are very scarce throughout our county. So option 2 for me would be the recommendation.
Through the chair, I just had a question for Roxanne. I did have a motel owner who reached out to me during the holidays. And they were actually asking me if I knew about vouchers because they wanted to assist some of the unsheltered population. And they told me that they have worked before with the Housing Resource Center. But that when they called to inquire, they were told that I guess it wasn't cold enough. I don't know if there has to be like a temperature, certain degrees in order to activate the referral. But there is, definitely local interest, but, I just wanted to ask that. But again, I do think that we need a permanent solution. And I do realize that the referrals that we get or the vouchers that we get are usually just for a couple of days.
Yes, the inclement weather vouchers that are through the Department of Social Services, but managed by the coalition. It has to be 45 degrees or colder, plus a chance of rain. So should the council want us to explore option 3, we would have to define what inclement weather means to us, and what's the ranges and which time, like what's the time frame in which we're willing to keep people inside of them.
Through the chair, Roxanne, and so we would be in control of that, though. We'd be the ones issuing that, and we create that criteria, and those were one of the critical things that we could establish that ensure that we can raise that ceiling so that it'd be easier to obtain and we're in control of it. So that's a good part. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that comment. I think option 2 gives us a control as well, and the vouchers, then it wouldn't be, I mean, I want to agree with Councilwoman Corralejo that this provides us, option 2 provides us with more of a permanent solution to be able to still be in control, but also be able to ensure that within that 2 to 3 year time frame, hopefully we can eliminate those individuals from going back into the riverbed, and that we wouldn't have that anymore. And looking at, continuing to look at options, how we have resources available. I think for me, what I've learned in my last several years of trying to assist with getting resources to our homeless individuals is the lack of resources, and the lack of resources when people need it. And again, the voucher situation, that is not permanent. It's only temporary, and the people are back out. And if they can't find a permanent solution, then they're back out in the river again, and they're back out homeless again. And that includes children. And so for me is option 2 provides that permanent solution to be able to look at a sustainable, at least for the 2 to 5 year, 3 year process of this grant, to be able to ensure that we're housing those that need to be housed, and that we're also at the same time looking at long-term solutions that we can implement, to be able to ensure that this doesn't continue to grow in our city. So my recommendation is option 2, and I do want to just, my final thought is, I know I had asked previously before to have, in terms of the budget impacts, so the council could really understand what those budget impacts are in terms of what we currently have with our homelessness, is that I know the city of Salinas does a categorization when they go out for calls for services, whether it be police or fire, when it's related to our homeless encampments. And so I wanted to see if there's a possibility that we do the same, or have we done that? I know Chief, obviously, and his team have been excellent and going out there. They have been for many, many years, you know, assisting the homeless and giving out, you know, jackets, giving out, you know, resources, toiletries and everything that's needed. But I also know they've been impacted in the calls for services. And so I think for me is I want to make sure that the council understands the financial impact that we have as well. So if we can document that and provide a budget impact in terms of the calls for services. So, you know, for me, I think the option 2 is really providing more of a sustainable, permanent solution to address the encampment situation that I have. And that's my recommendation. Obviously, we have some different, you know, different views on this item. But I think for me, going back, you know, to make sure that those individuals and plus some of those families that we have that, as I said, are living in their cars and living with children in their cars, that's unacceptable, inexcusable for us to have an opportunity to do something. And it's like, where can we agree so that way we can support the families that need it?
Question here for procedurally is, can we move forward with 2 options? Is that possible? And for them to look at the funding, then that way we provide something
I think
for
we
this on the list?
yeah, I mean, and Roxanne, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to have a specific program that we put forward through the ERF. Because there's also a budget that goes along, and each of these are gonna have, the resources are gonna be in different buckets depending on what option is, like, you know, obviously.
So no.
So I would say no, but let Roxanne, if I'm overstepping.
No, you are correct. We will need to explain in detail what our plan is. And having a very clear pathway to permanent housing, really prioritizing the health and safety of the individuals is what's going to move our project to the top of the funding list.
And I think, just to add, I think either 3 options for the interim housing, we think we can put together a great proposal, whatever is the desire of council.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So council, yes, we want to move this along. So, you know, obviously, if we're going to have a successful application, even though we have 3 different options, there is going to be, you know, scrutinizing in terms of what is the option that is providing more of that permanent solution to the housing, to the homeless situation. And I think option 3 doesn't get us there because it doesn't give us that permanent solution. Option 2 does. So for me, I recommend moving forward with providing something for option 2 and coming back. I know it's due February 1st, so we obviously are in a time crunch in order to make this happen. But I would recommend, and I know we're not making a motion, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking for direction, or actually, like this thing.
Yeah, I think that you are actually, I want to make sure direction and provide staff and direction for the purposes of sustainment. But I mean, you're giving direction, but that direction is going to be acted upon, right? And so you are essentially, yeah, you're taking action.
Okay, so, sorry, through the chair, I do have a question for staff and perhaps for Roxanne as well. If we move forward with I guess with the recommendation today as a council, are we able to later change, like if we get input for our community? Because I do feel honestly like it's a little bit rushed, and I would love to get the input, not just from the community, but from the unsheltered folk themselves, and they have gone before to our workshops. And I, really would have loved to have had their input. Is that something, or whatever we put on this grant proposal is set in stone and we have to follow?
Yeah, and I might have, Roxanne answer that. I think generally we're fleshing out what the grant is. There might be some, things that could be added through engagement, like whether, security or fencing or other things that may not be spelled out, but I don't know, Roxanne, maybe you're better equipped to answer than I.
I am a huge advocate of involving people who would be participants in the program and really getting an understanding of their needs and as we develop the program and flesh it out some more. So absolutely. And I also do think it is appropriate for us to do community engagement. What we could, I'm trying to think, this is the problem with a lot of the state grants is they move super, super fast. So I suppose we could, we would definitely do community engagement. I'm just trying to think of like the best strategy to ensure that people don't feel like we're just throwing it at them and the decisions have been made. But also giving an opportunity for them to engage and be a part of the process as well.
Roxanne, with that, if we can have, I know we obviously don't, I think one of the things for the council to consider is that this application is due February 1st.
Yeah.
Right, it's due February 1st, so we don't have a lot of that additional time, but as the grant is being submitted and we can start doing some additional comments and engagement. But I just want to say in terms of, there has been community engagement. So it's not, not in terms of this specific project, but there has been community engagement and lived experience, right? I think one of the criteria that we talk about is not just having residents, our residents, but also the residents that are impacted to be able to provide feedback to the council. And that has been done in multiple ways. So I just want to make sure that we understand that it's not like there has been discussions about the impact of our homeless population, and there has been discussions, there has been workshops, community workshops, where we actually had a good representative of our community, plus our lived experience folks that live out in the encampment. So I just want to make sure I clarify that, because I think there has been, and I think what we've heard and the part of what Megan and the report says is, what I've heard, and I participated in the majority of those, has been, we need to do something. What can we do? And housing has been one of the big priorities in terms of the homeless conversation is, obviously the need for services, but on top of that has floated up. We need housing. We need permanent housing. So I think in that feedback in terms of what has been discussed already and what the council has done this past year, we have engaged. But if there's an opportunity to look at, hey, if we move forward, how do we continue to do that? And imperative, but we can't do that before February 1st, I guess, if that's what the council wants to say, hey, we're going to do a workshop next week. Is that even feasible or possible? I guess it can be, but how many people would we really engage and what are we looking, what kind of feedback are we looking for? Feedback on option 1, 2, or 3, or I think that's
the chair.
Yeah, so let me just finish. So anyways, those are my comments in terms of what we're here today with this opportunity. Again, I'm just gonna say this last comment is an opportunity for us based on already some of the discussions that we've heard from our stakeholders, from our community, for the adoption of the plan. We didn't have any funding. I know it was really hard for us to figure out what we needed. I've always advocated for a shelter with children and families because South County really needs more of that. But now we have an opportunity to be able to have a temporary solution that's going to get us to a permanent solution for housing. And for me, I want to continue to move forward with option 2 and then looking at if there's opportunity for more engagement.
Yeah, so my question, Mayor, is that, presenting those ideas, because the homeless and to the people in that area that saying, you know, what are you guys looking at, 1, 2, or 3? What is your preference? And that way we get input from them as well and we move forward together. I think if we could do that and do it quickly, and because the response has been what you have just said, the response has been there, do we need help? I looked at the survey, took the survey as well. And so it wasn't really specific to the town, but to the county, right? To, you know, what's needed in South County. Do you think housing's needed? Do you think? So now we have narrowed it down to some specific ideas, and like Councilmember Orlando said, then it's thrust of the pond is on here on the 17th, and without really having an opportunity to digest it and having to move forward. You gotta have it by February 1st, otherwise we're out of luck. And I don't think no one on this council wants to miss this opportunity. We just want to make sure that we address it appropriately.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So with that said, I want to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity, because, you know, we obviously want more engagement. I know, we are at the 17th today. So what is the time frame to be able to put together the application, Roxanne? So that way, I mean, I just want to make sure council also understands there's also an application process. So it's not just, hey, we're having a community meeting next week and then the application is due the following week, because there is a process for the grant to be submitted and information to be collected. So what is your timeline, Roxanne and Megan, to be able to, if we were to have a community meeting next week, would that be feasible? And then what's the timeline that you need to be able to move forward to prepare the grant documents and submit it on a timely manner? Would we meet the February 1st deadline?
Unfortunately not, as you had mentioned, Mayor, I have to go to my Board of Supervisors. In order for us to get approval to apply, we would want to have a dollar amount of budget strategy drafted. And our timelines is everything needs to be routed for agenda on the 24th for me to get to the 30th meeting.
Yeah, so I knew there was gonna be the time constraints, so yeah, so I counsel again, I mean, here's an opportunity for us to do something. It might not be exactly the fix that we want, but we do have an opportunity to take advantage, and hopefully we get funded, right? We don't even know whether the funds would come in or not. We hope that we apply and that we do have a strong application and that we would be able to get funded. It's not a permanent solution. I mean, it's a permanent solution to housing, but it's not permanent in terms of securing that piece of land. That's not going to be, you know, that's not going to be restricted for its use, you know, for future. It's only within that 2 to 3 year time frame. And then if hopefully we get everybody housed and we don't need that anymore, then we don't need to continue with that. So for me, council, I think option 2 is what presents a more temporary in terms of restricting the zoning and the location, but also a permanent source of trying to house the people that we do have in the encampments.
Through the chair, I had a question for staff. Do we have any requirements when it comes to public notices to the surrounding? I guess there are, that I'm aware of, 2 residential homes in that area within 1,500 feet with 2 families. There's one that's probably the closest one to the 990 property is a family of 4, I believe, with young children, pretty young children. Is there any kind of obligation when it comes to notices that we would have to, as a city, provide to them prior to pushing this done?
I might defer to Mike, but my understanding is we allow for kind of emergency shelter in this particular zone now with the recent change. And therefore it's really a by right kind of use, but I think Roxanne mentioned that as a good neighbor policy, if we end up with option 2, we would go out and engage the nearby residents and see what we could do to, you know, mitigate or, you know, make sure that there's minimal impact on nearby residents. So that would be something that we would do. And I don't know, Mike, if that's your.
That's correct.
So that's as a result of the zoning changes that we approved as a council last.
Yeah, and actually it's, I mean, it's state law. State law has required that jurisdictions and indeed in our housing element, we have to identify places for emergency shelter. That would be by right.
Okay. Okay, council, so we need to move on.
Well, with that, Mayor, then, if I may offer a motion to go ahead and move forward and with option 3.
Okay, so I thought we're not doing a motion. I thought it's a recommendation, so,
You have to have,
I mean,
your rules, say that, any action of the council has to be by way of 3 individuals, right? So it has to be supported by 3. So you have to have a consensus, even if you're just providing direction as to, yes, we want to partner up, and
a consensus of 3, we don't have a consensus of 3.
that's what I mean. So we need a consensus of 3 in order to make this work.
Okay, so council, we are not gonna have a consensus of 3. Obviously, I'm supportive of option 2, provided with, I don't wanna restate my reasons why I think this is a better option, in terms of permanent solution for our housing. And so I think we need to come to an agreement, if we wanna take advantage of this and really looking at how do we make sure that we too, as a council, come to consensus on what's in the best interest of our community and our residents that need the support and the help in the encampment. More of a permanent solution. I think for me, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, I understand your concerns and, you know, in terms of option 2 and really wanting to make sure that we don't tie up our land for future. But I think option 2 gives us the opportunity not to tie it up for permanent, right? But gives us a 2 to 3 year time frame to be able to look at how do we provide the permanent housing to these folks that is needed with the wraparound services, with, you know, all the other services that come along with, you know, supporting our homeless population to really get out of homelessness. So with that, we need a consensus to be able to move forward, because if we don't do that tonight, Megan, then we lose the opportunity to apply for the grant. And as Roxanne said, obviously, I want to thank Roxanne also for coming and giving us this opportunity. I know that you work closely with, you know, I know you were working on the encampment resolution grant last year that the city of Pajaro received. And I know, you know, the opportunities for us weren't there because that was more of the emergency that was needed, but here's another opportunity under round 3. And I know for us in South County, we keep saying we don't have the resources, we don't have, you know, the county is not supporting us. And so here is, we have the county supporting, we have an opportunity to bring the resources, we have an opportunity not just to bring the resources, but to really truly permanently house the people that are homeless in our area. And whether it's people from Soledad or in our South County region, you know, I think that's really important for us to really take that into consideration, that there is an opportunity and there is a solution that's being presented to us tonight. And it's, you know, our duty as council members, I know it's not easy, but it's our duty as council members to make sure that we take on these opportunities that are presented to us, even if it's at the last minute, right? We want to take advantage of the money that's available because we don't have the money. We don't have our general fund money. We'll never have that kind of money to be able to set aside for that.
And through the chair, if I may, with that said, then, you know, I'm willing to move forward with option 3 and take advantage of that and provide housing and provide a place for them to get them off the riverbed, to get them into healthy situations, to help them start progressing to permanent housing, for us to meet that need and help with the other housing that we're bringing on as well. We have an opportunity to do that, whether it just doesn't have to be option 2. There's also option 3 that we could do that can meet those needs too. So, with that said, we have an opportunity to do this, whether we have a consensus on that. I'm saying we can address it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think I mean, we can go on forever, right? So we have to decide. I think for me, option 2 it is quicker, but it's motel vouchers, and those are not gonna accommodate forever, and that's not a permanent solution. And so that doesn't get us to the permanent solution that we're looking for, where option 2 gives us that opportunity to be able to have the resources, the housing that's there. As I mentioned, and I shared my story with the community because I've talked to many of the homeless individuals and tried to get the resources, and what we have available, even through the motel vouchers, is, again, 80 to 85% of our motel units are occupied the majority of the time. And the motel vouchers are vouchers. They're not a permanent source of trying to get people into permanent housing. And we don't have that opportunity. So I think this gives us a 2-year time frame to be able to take the opportunity to say, we have a solution, this is what we're gonna do. And then working with other resources in the county to say, how do we make sure that we don't have more people that are becoming homeless, and that we try to, I mean, I know people say we're gonna eradicate homelessness, and sometimes you say that's kind of naive, right? But I think for us, under option 2, we can take the people that we have in the river and be able to provide them with a permanent solution, long-term permanent solution for housing.
Can we put the 3 options back up on the screen again, just so that we can make sure that we're all on the same place with respect to what those 3 options offer?
And Roxanne, I do have, I don't know if this would split hairs or if this would be helpful, but through the chair, I'm wondering if we could even structure something like we would be working on option 3 first, because option 2 is going to take time anyhow to establish. And if we're not as successful in housing people with option 3, we would work towards option 2. I don't know if that's an option that we could clarify in the application, if that makes sense. If we
Yes.
go back to option 3, the idea would be we would actually just directly permanently house people from the encampment, which we were planning on doing anyhow with option 2. We were going to take the low hanging fruit and see if we could get the rental subsidies and get, especially the families, to get them housed. But option 2, we felt like was a good option because it may take some time, but even setting up option 2 is not going to be quick. It's going to take maybe 12 months to get option 2 going anyhow. I don't know, Roxanne, if that makes sense as a kind of a strategy.
Yes, it absolutely does. We can theoretically have everyone in the encampment assessed and for us to get an understanding of their acuity levels. And then we can make assumptions that a certain number of individuals we think we can house directly from the encampment, and we could theoretically reduce the footprint of the structures, maybe not having enough units for everyone, but having enough units to serve the most vulnerable. That may take a little bit more time for us to find housing options for.
Yeah, thank you, Roxanne, for that. So I think
the idea would be a hybrid of the 2.
Yeah.
You think, Roxanne, if you get creative, that you would be able to create some sort of hybrid that would allow sort of a combo of the interest that the council has expressed in both options 2 and 3.
Absolutely, that is doable.
Thank you, Roxanne. So I think we have consensus from the council then that the hybrid would work with the option 3 and the option 2. And then that would reduce, hopefully, if option 3 is successful, then we would reduce the print of option 2. Okay, and would that still get us hopefully a successful application, given that it's a hybrid of both, which I think is actually better than,
Yeah, I actually think it makes it very. Sorry,
Yeah,
Chair.
okay. No, go ahead.
I actually think it makes it even more competitive of a application.
So then just to make sure that we're clear, the clear direction is, yes, we want to partner, and two, we want to have the grant present a sort of a hybrid of options 2 and 3 together, sort of work with one another so that the transitional housing, the actual footprint may be able to be reduced based on the success of moving forward with option 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and I really want to also thank you, Roxanne, for the incredible work that you do.
Thank you.
And thank you to the council also for the dialogue that we have. Obviously, each one of us is pretty passionate about the things that we feel are important. So I'm glad that we're able to come to a resolution. So with that, then you have direction to be able to move with what was just mentioned. Okay, perfect. Thank you, council. Okay, so with that, it's already 9:29. Let's move on to then, we'll go back to item B-1. B-1, yes, and it's now B-4, but consideration of a partial tax to support future fire services. Thank you, Mike, and thank you to our fire chief that's here as well. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and council members. You have the staff report that has been presented, and so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I do want to go through some of the highlights for our discussion this evening. The City of Soledad began contracting with CAL FIRE in January of 2012. At that time, the city was under significant financial distress. At that time, contracting with CAL FIRE resulted in significant savings to the city's budget. The City Council has asked for an update of what the estimated cost would be if the city were to bring the fire services back in-house. Our current contract with CAL FIRE ends in June of this year, June of 2024, and we will soon begin negotiations with CAL FIRE representatives for a new agreement. The analysis of the estimated cost to bring fire services back in-house, the pay scale, some of the assumptions that were used to prepare this was to use the pay scale of the city of Greenfield. The city of Greenfield is the closest jurisdiction with a full in-house fire department in South County. King City currently has a volunteer fire department, and the city of Gonzales has a brand new fully staffed fire department with a completely different structure than even what we have today. So the closest structure that's closest to ours is what the city of Greenfield has. The analysis shows that at the current time, contracting with CAL FIRE continues to be a good value. With the estimated in-house cost of about $2.4 million, if we were to be in-house today, compared to our budget of $1.6 million, which $1.5 million of that is the CAL FIRE contract. In kind of walking through the analysis, there is some things to get us to comparing apples to apples, because the CAL FIRE team works on a 72-hour work schedule, but most local jurisdictions work on the 56-hour staffing. And so I worked with our fire chief to be able to do that conversion of what the number of staffing would be on a 56-hour work week, comparable to the 2-0 staffing that we have. And with my experience in just recently negotiating the contract with the city of Gonzales, these are more numbers that are in line with what we would need. So we would need, if we were to come back in-house, 3 captains, 6 firefighters. We would have to hire a fire chief, which we currently, we do have a chief, but not full-time. We share that chief with 2 other jurisdictions, right? And an assistant chief. There's some overtime factors in there. The other things that we currently enjoy with the CAL FIRE contract is we use the CAL FIRE 911 and radio system. So the charges that we get through Monterey County for our 911 system don't include the calls for the fire department. They only include our police department. So if we brought them back in-house, we would have to go with Monterey County 911. And in the analysis, I didn't say that it would double. I said that it would go up by 50%, but we certainly could see a really large call volume there. Additionally, we would now take on the responsibility of the liability for workers' comp, and that's a real hard unknown. I know, we just paid a bill. You'll see it on the next warrants. Or maybe it was included in this evening. I don't think it was, but our current bill that we just paid to Ambasia was $800,000. And that was our second half from the first payment that we made in July. So we are already approaching close to $1 million in workers' comp and liability insurance for the jurisdiction. So we'll figure out, we've got to figure out ways to address that. So on our current staffing level is 2.0. The industry standard is 3.0. And so I took the analysis a little bit beyond what was requested by council, and I said, okay, if we went today on a 3.0 staffing, which would be the industry standard, using today's costs, that estimate would be about $3 million. Okay, that's not factoring any future increases. That's what it would be today if we went to the industry standard. Now, moving to an industry standard, there is the potential, there's no guarantee that our ISO rating would decrease. And so the way the ISO ratings work is it's a 1 to 10 scale. The lower your rating, the better it is. What that translates into, for our commercial users and our residents is the lower cost for your insurance, potentially. So this could be a benefit for economic development, economic growth, moving to an industry standard. We have heard from CAL FIRE that at the state level, not the local regional level, most of our negotiating in the past has been at the local level. And now we're hearing that there is some push and mandate coming from the state level that they are going to be pushing for all municipal contracts with CAL FIRE to move to, or have some plan to move to 3.0 staffing, which would be the industry standard. And we've already discussed it on today's dollars, that would be $3 million. In a couple of years, that could be $3.5 million. If we start pushing in, 3, 4, 5% increases in wages. The majority of the cost again is salaries, just like our police department. It's salaries and benefits is the majority cost of public safety. So if we know that the state is probably going to be pushing that we move to an industry standard of 3.0, we also have the delivery of the new ladder truck. And in order to move the ladder truck out and to safely operate this new apparatus, we need 3 staffing on it. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to manage that new apparatus that's coming in currently today. If we know we're moving that way, our current revenue stream can't handle a $3 million, or not $3 million, a $1 million increase, or greater than $1 million increase in our current budget. So if the city were to move, also other reasons to move to 3.0 staffing would be if the city wants to continue to grow with potential higher dense housing and possibly 3-level, apartment, 3-story level apartments, and actually putting more dense housing in the city, as well as hotels that are 3 stories, as well as commercial and industrial users coming in, or retail coming into our community. They're going to be looking to see what our ISO rating is and the ability for a fire department to respond to any kind of disaster. Positives that come with CAL FIRE contract is the city gets a fully trained fire department. We come in-house, we're now responsible for all of the training and maintaining to make sure that we have the best training possible. And what happens most frequently in a budget crisis, we're not there today, but in a budget crisis, the first thing we do is we start trimming our training budget. Not saying that that's the best thing to do, but saying that that's the reality of what happens to most organizations. The The city doesn't have to, other benefits with CAL FIRES, the city doesn't have to deal with any recruiting. We don't have to deal with any of the replacements. The CAL FIRE organization is an extremely large organization and they can move firefighters in and out. We don't have to take on the responsibility of recruiting. I mentioned the workers' compensation risk. Right now, we don't take that risk. CAL FIRE takes the risk. And so I think they mostly mitigate that by the training programs that they have. Also mentioned that a huge benefit for us is we use the CAL FIRE radio system. We don't have to purchase the radios and we use their 911 system and not have to use Monterey County, which is very expensive. I don't know a jurisdiction that doesn't complain about the cost of the 911 system in our county. So if we have a sense that we may need to move on and start moving to that direction of 3.0 staffing, rather than just present a problem or a potential problem to you, we wanted to also present an option for a potential solution. So staff has recommended or evaluated and is putting forward to you this evening the possibility of taking up to the voters a partial tax to support fire services, exclusively fire services. The city of Greenfield currently has a partial tax for fire services, and for the purposes of the analysis that I did for this evening, I used their model. We'll talk about the, if the council says yes, move forward, we would actually develop a model that makes sense to us and not just adopt their policy. But for the purposes of the analysis and using the Greenfield parcel tax model, I estimate that a parcel tax in the city of Soledad would bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of $900,000 to $1 million annually. As the city grows, new parcels are added, those dollars would increase because all new incremental parcels would automatically bring in additional revenue. The impact on the majority of our residents, which would be the single family dwellings, would be $219 a year. Okay, let's just say $220 a year, or just over $18 a month. Okay, would be the effect of a parcel tax. For a multifamily dwelling, it's $164 a year, or about $13.70 per month for the parcel tax. Commercial and industrial has a range from $93 to $219, plus a per square foot is what the Greenfield model has of 7 cents per square foot. A parcel tax would be placed on the property owner's tax bill and paid with the payment of property taxes in December and April. Now, a parcel tax would require a 2/3 vote to pass. This is not a 50%, greater 50%, because it's a specific tax for a specific purpose and would require 2/3 vote. Staff is not saying in any way that we need to make, that we're in a dire strait, and we need to make action today and that we need to have a parcel tax today. However, we are presenting it as a solution for upcoming funding if we think we're going to have a budget problem. If the state mandates that we would have to move to 3.0 staffing, that could be in 3 years, that could be in 4 years. So staff is seeking direction tonight, hopefully to move forward with an analysis, possibly hiring a consultant to find out what model would actually make sense for the city of Soledad. Because for the purpose of tonight's discussion, we're just looking at the Greenfield model. And possibly targeting a November 2025 election, which would give us plenty of time to do community outreach and education of the public of why the partial tax would be necessary. So that concludes my report, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Mike. So let me take it out to the public first, and then I'll come back to the council. So any members of the public that are joining us here would like to make a comment on item B-1, which is B-4 on our agenda? Okay, then any members of the public that are joining us via Zoom would like to make a comment on this specific item? Okay, seeing no hands raised, and I will bring it back to the council. I guess we could do both. It's 9:43 already, so let's do questions and comments, and that way we can move on and we can kind of provide the guidance that's needed for today. So I will start with, Mayor Pro Tem Jimenez, because I know he had brought up the, conversation previously in regards to an in-house fire department as opposed to the contract. So, I'll turn it over to him, and then Councilwoman Corralejo, and then I'll make my remarks at the end.
Thank you. With the addition of the ladder truck, we have to go to three, right?
We're gonna have to figure out how.
We have to go to three, or you can't operate that. Am I right, Jason?
Is it mandate?
Yeah, to operate it safely and meet your NFPA requirements or
So Iowa
guidelines.
State's Park.
That's correct. You want to be at 3 for the safety of the personnel and to be efficient to actually do what you're doing. You're talking a very specialized piece of equipment. How we get to 3 can be creatively done in the future, but yeah, you would want 3. You would want 3.
Thank you. So, yeah, it's a tax on top of the tax, but the one thing about the tax thing is, for me, is that at least it's gonna go out to the voters, right? So I go out to them, 2/3 tax, say, yeah, tax us again, you know? And then the unfortunate part that I'm looking for is, it's just the property owners. And I mean, there's more than just the property owners that live and will benefit from that service. We all do. And how can we do that? Be more creative, that we all pay for that apparatus or that staffing or the funding of the fire department. And then secondly, we also already went out and had them support the Measure S and Measure Y. Y is for is the parks or the public safety? Public safety is Y, right? So of that, I think what, 400, how many thousands go to that, 460?
We support the CAL FIRE contract with about $450,000.
Okay, that's what I thought, and then the rest comes out of the general fund?
Comes out of the general fund.
So that's approximately, at this point right now, around 800,000?
1.1 million.
1.1 million?
The current year contract for CAL FIRE.
So we're looking at 1.5 million, so we're looking at doubling to 3 million most likely. And that's gonna cost us anyway, so either way, okay. I'm looking for a way for staff to come back to us and say, hey, how do we do this? And we have everybody participate in this community. All 20,000 residents to lessen the impact of putting the burden on the property owners all the time. And so when you pay your property taxes, and it's a privilege, no doubt about it, to have your own home, especially after hearing the homeless presentation and how fortunate many of us are in that respect. But we had the high school, we had start way back Eden Valley, we have the middle school, we have teacher housing now, and those we're all being taxed. So the question is, how do we do this so we can pass this on, something more we can all participate, and thereby lessening the impact on everyone.
Well, the only options that we would have, and we actually don't have an open option for us that I can think of to increase revenues, would be for sales tax. But we've already maxed out our 2% with Measure Y and with Measure S, and the portions that the county has taken with Measure X, as well as the MST measure that was 0.75%. So with all of those measures, we're now at our cap of the 2% that we're allowed by law. Now, there is the possibility to say, okay, we want to petition the state or the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration to go beyond that 2%. The city of Greenfield has a tax higher than that 2%. But that's only because they had already gone to their 2% for local taxes themselves. So when MST wanted to do theirs, in order to get a county measure passed, TAMSI petitioned the state. And the state said, yes, we'll allow Greenfield to go over because the county tax was in jeopardy because of one jurisdiction. So there's the potential to do that. The problem with that is that taxes the users that are buying. And with our sales tax in our city, we are fortunate that the majority of our sales tax is actually not borne by the residents of the city. It's actually borne because we have some great freeway traffic with our exits. And they're coming off the freeway, they're buying our gas, they're stopping at our fast food, they're stopping at Rite Aid, they're going to Starbucks, they're coming into our shopping centers. And so we're getting a lot of out of town folks. That ebbs and flows with the economy. So we may do really well, and in a recession, we're gonna see that decrease. We just had a sales tax meeting, and our sales tax is softening to where we think we're gonna be okay this year, but in next year, it starts, in 24, 25, it starts dropping off quite a bit, is what the consultants are telling us now. With a parcel tax, it seems to be the most equitable because it touches every single parcel within the city. So, and you know, it touches all of the residents. Whether you're renting or whether you're a owner, because if I'm renting, most likely my landlord's probably increasing my rent on an annual basis anyway. And they're probably gonna increase it greater than the $18 a month. I'm just making an assumption there. But it touches every resident, whether you are an owner or a renter inside the city. And it doesn't just touch the residents, it touches all of the commercial and industrial users as well, who have a little bit higher demand, excuse me, on the fire services, if there was a catastrophic event. That's why they, in the Greenfield model, they imposed a cents per square foot for the size of the commercial building.
Yeah, but the homeowner can't raise his own, he's not gonna raise his own what, mortgage to pay for it? I mean, I'm still bearing it, so I hear you, I hear what you're saying. And for those that are landlords and they're able to raise, then, you know, the poor guy's renting the place or family's renting, he's gonna pass it on to them. And so, but the homeowner that's not renting out, is not doing the ADU and converting the garage and all that other stuff, they're not seeing that. And many of those that are having residents don't even live here anyway. They're just buying, you know, the property and then renting it out. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll, Councilwoman Corralejo.
Yes, and thank you for that information. I did have similar concerns, but I won't go there since you explained very thoroughly, so thank you for that. But I know for me, I guess my first question that I have, and this might be a question for the fire chief, was how many calls do you get per year? Like has there been a big increase? I'm figuring it's probably like 2,000 maybe?
Yeah, so we're very close to 2,000 calls. We're at a point now where the city of Soledad, said first time I've been here in 4 years, where the fire department's being initiated to multiple calls within a few minute time frame. So 2,000 calls for a city this size is, for any fire department, for any single fire station, that's an astronomical number. 2,000 calls is very, very high. We're trying to limit that by, we created new auto aid agreements with the city of Greenfield, because just like Greenfield's getting the rise, we're trying to limit the use, we're trying to keep that fire engine in the city of Soledad. So our auto aid now is very fine tuned, where if it's a priority 1 emergency, the engine will go assist the neighboring city. We've agreed with CTF, and we're trying to work avenues to help us with those 2,000 calls. So 2,000 calls is where we're very close to.
So it has been a pretty big increase the last 4 years.
Correct. With the same staff from 2012, the numbers increased points because of a battalion chief or training captain, but yeah, it's the same 5 individuals.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so to me, you know, safety, public safety is very important, so I definitely do see the need for that additional, you know, third person. And I do feel, you know, that for me, what I see from CAL FIRE is not just that it'll help with recruiting, versus having it in-house, because we seem to have such a big issue finding it, so many different positions, and we're blessed out today. We have so many new ones coming in. But I think it's not just with the recruiting, but for me, it's more important, it's the retaining, because I do see the difference from back in the day when it comes to, you know, the training promotional opportunities because it's a larger, organization. And all that, so I do see the value in that, and I think for me, it was just also, is there any other options besides the parcel, which I heard, I don't think that there is. But I think for me, that's the only questions that I had. I just was curious as to how many calls we are getting.
Thank you, Councilwoman Corralejo, for those comments. So, I have several comments to make, and Mike, thank you for also just kind of walking me through some of this as well. But I mean, for me, thank you. One is for putting together that analysis. I think that was part of what we wanted to see, whether that it would be more cost effective to have an in-house police department or to contract with CAL FIRE. And based on the numbers that you presented today with the real data, real figures of today, these are the numbers and they're pretty extreme. So I think the cost effective for the city is to continue the contract with CAL FIRE as opposed to having an in-house for many different reasons. If we ever get to that several years from now, or that could be a different discussion with the council, but as what we stand right now and the numbers that are presented to us right now, and because of all the assumptions in terms of workers' comp, obviously we are still dealing with a lot of unfunded liabilities through PERS and PEPRA. And so adding more people on our staff increases that, and the city, still has to contend with that in the future and how we're going to pay that down. So, all of those things are really incredible. And for me, I think I didn't understand this, but I just want to be clear. And I think you made this clear for us, because right now we don't pay the 911 calls. And I know when looking at the warrants, I mean, just for this time around and just for this specific, I mean, it was almost 100,000. It was 95,000 just for the police calls, right? This doesn't even factor in the calls for services from fire. And if it's at 2,000 calls for services, I mean, that is incredible amount of money that we don't have to currently absorb. And that's part of what we, that CAL FIRE absorbs. I just want to clarify, and I know you said that it's a mandate, but I just want to make sure it's certain, because just because we're getting the ladder truck, I mean, it is a standard of 3-0, but that's coming in at the end of this year. The contract is expiring with CAL FIRE in June of this year. But is it a mandate, or you said we can still be creative on how we're going to staff it? But it's not. I just want to make sure that we're clear whether it is a mandate, and a mandate is you have to have it, we have no option, or there's options available to how we're going to get to that 3-0.
So, and that's where we're using the term industry standard on a specialized piece of equipment. When I say creative, it would be a phased-in approach, and I know that's not the atmosphere we're not in right now, but once a ladder truck is here, it's a specialized piece of equipment. And with that being said, you have one individual that's going to set it up. It takes two people to set up a ladder truck. That third individual is going to go do their walk around on the structure, basically size up the situation they have. It's industry standard because just about all fire departments with the paid staff, full-time fire department, you don't see ladder trucks staffed below 3. Is it a mandate? Like state required law? No. But NFPA standard is what the standards are. And when you go against that, then you get into OSHA and other issues. And there's more to it. I plan on presenting to council a much more thorough dynamic of why 3 people and everything else. But for this, yeah, it's not state law that this ladder truck is requiring 3. It's just industry standard.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification. So with that, because I mean, obviously I understand industry standard, but it's not a mandate. And we have some time, at least on that side, right? Because it is coming in this year to be able to talk about what's the best approach. But just on this for me and looking at, I also obviously have a hard time with increasing any sales tax, especially to our residents. I know we did it during COVID. And I was absolutely surprised that our residents approved, the sales tax that we put before them. And I know our residents have been very generous in terms of approving sales tax for a multitude of stuff. I mean, I look at my property roll and there's tons of taxes, right? But I think what was presented to us, at least in terms of whether it's a sales tax that not everybody, all of the residents don't contribute to it unless, you pump gas here, but the majority, as you said, is really not the residents that are bearing that cost, but it's really the travelers that are coming, right? And the majority of that is with the gas tax. So I think the solution that you presented, at least for me, it provides, although, I'm just really hesitant about any tax increases, but it does provide more of a palatable, inclusive opportunity to make sure that the tax is not just to the residents, not just to the property owners, but it also is to the business, to the multi-family, whoever owns parcels here in the city, right? And also to any of the non-residential. So it is more spread across in terms of who it's applied to, as opposed to, I'm trying to figure out who are we missing as part of who's not being taxed, right? In our community. So this is more on the fair side in terms of overall, it will be a community decision to be made because it does impact a lot of residents in the community. That is not just the property owner. I mean, so I'm trying to figure out like who else is missing that we're not taxing that is part of this, but I think it's pretty comprehensive in terms of the three different portions that you funded. And I think for me, looking at the 219, and I know we do this when we look at all of the other BADs and MADs and things that we have assessment districts that our residents also have to contend with. But for me, as I look at this, and if I look at it's 212 times 12, 18 months, it's $18 like per month, right? Really at the end of the year, what that costs our residents in terms of public safety to be able to have that resource, I think it's invaluable. And, I know for some of us, I don't want to, I know that there's a lot of financial challenges for many of our residents as well. So that can be a hefty lift, but I think looking at it, hey, it's $18 per month, sometimes that equates to 3 cups of coffee, in a month that we drink, right? That could be that amount for being able to provide a service. And I guess for me, there's a couple of other things that I want to, as we're having this conversation, want to ensure that we include, because it's, okay, your recommendation is, can we go out? Do we even have, do our residents even have the appetite for this, right? If we go out, get a consultant, we'll know as a council, yeah, they do or no. And if they don't, we're obviously not gonna go to an election in 2025 for it to be defeated. But I think it is incumbent upon us as a council now to be able to look at the long term, because this is coming. And I know the last time that we had the contract with CAL FIRE, there was already a 3 million increase. There was already like the 3.0, right? And at that time, the council looked at that and we said, that's incredibly expensive and we don't have the funding for it. Lucky we have the Measure Y, but Measure Y funds, I mean, we don't know what they're gonna continue, I mean, what kind of funding source that's gonna continue to provide. And, I think it's important that we start looking ahead is how do we generate more revenues to be able to offset some of the increased costs that are coming. And now whether, we're looking at CAL FIRE, obviously it's more cost effective and even that's expensive, right? So looking at a permanent solution to be able to say, how do we do this? We know as a council, we have more housing that's projected with the Miramonte project. And although that's a couple of years away, well, I think we can start working toward what the need is going to be because we know that that's coming. So I think it's important for us to move forward. And I would like to get the community input in terms of what is their appetite for an increase in the sales tax to be able to support, solely 100%. It's going to go to FIRE. It's not going to anyone else. And then the other thing I want us to be having a conversation also at the same time, because I think it ties to it, is Measure Y. Because Measure Y was also for police and fire, but it sunsets. And I know it's coming with a sunset date, but it's also looking at how do we go back out also to our residents to make sure that we can permanently have this as a sales tax, because it's not permanent as it stands right now. So where can we, as part of this process and this discussion, also look at, okay, so what do we need to start doing to prepare our community to go out to say, Measure Y, we wanted to convert to a permanent sales tax because it's not permanent now. And I know we talked about advertising, making sure that our community knows where the dollars are going, but that's an important conversation. And then for me, the third piece also is the calls for service, as Councilwoman Corralejo mentioned, is 2,000 calls for service. But also I think what I've seen is a lot of those calls for service, 90% of those are for medical. So our calls for service for fire, although we've had some more structural fires, you know, are really not fire related, they're medical related. And so as part of that conversation is how do we restructure also, or what models do we have that are looking at our ambulance services? Because that's another discussion with this is, you know, it's tied to an astronomical amount of a contract where 90% of those calls are for medical. And yet we don't have a regional kind of ambulance service to be able to look at how do we offset some of those costs? And can we also be working with our different cities to be able to look at where's the opportunity for us to really address or look at a model to regionalize our fire service? And how does that look in the future? What is that going to look like? Because, I mean, that's an absorbent amount of calls also for that. And how do we really more regionalize that? So those are the conversations for me when, you know, we're talking about all this. I think that all ties in to, you know, having really a comprehensive understanding of how do we move forward, not just with this, but with other pieces that we also may need to look at. So with that, I don't know if there's, I mean, for me, I would like if there's a recommendation here that we need to make in terms of moving forward with providing direction on regarding the parcel tax to support future fire services to the city of Soledad. I think it's an important conversation to begin, and I would like to make the recommendation to council or make a motion to be able to support staff direction to move forward with going out to the community, hiring a consultant to see if there's an appetite for this parcel tax or not, and that it would solely 100% be for fire services.
And if I may, if you recall, I think several of you, or maybe just two of you, were on the council at the time that we did this process with a CFD a while back, where we said, hey, let's get a consultant on board, let's see what we go out. And we were looking at infrastructure needs at that time. And the appetite was not good. If you recall, I mean, it was less than 40% of the community that would support something. And so we stopped and we pulled back. I think the community might surprise us. And, you know, if we do a good job in educating the public of why we need it and why we don't have the revenue sources, and really being transparent and explaining to them, I think we might, you know, get some support. Our neighboring city to the north, Gonzales, that city council has already approved to explore a parcel tax to be on the ballot in November of this year, because they know that with a newly formed, very small jurisdiction, they can't afford, I mean, that going with I mean, this is public information, so I can share it because I presented it. When they moved from a volunteer fire department to a fully staffed, it increased their budget by almost $1 million. It was about $900,000, and they didn't have the revenue stream to take on that increase to the fully staffed fire department. But they had no choice because the volunteers all went away. Actually, Cal Fire hired most of them. And so there were no longer any volunteers. Plus, the requirements for volunteers have become so much more stringent that, you know, they have to be EMTs and those types of things. Then the volunteers started saying, well, if I have to do all the same requirements as a firefighter, then I want to be paid like a firefighter. I don't want to be a volunteer anymore if you're going to make me do the same requirements and have the same certifications. So with the changes and the dynamics, volunteer firefighters are kind of going away. King City is really fortunate at this point, but I predict that the day is coming that they will have to deal with it, and they won't be able to grow the way they want to grow and the way we want to grow as long as they maintain a volunteer fire department.
Yeah, no, thank you for those comments.
And some of the things that I mean, a whole lot has been mentioned, and some of them are more strategic long-term. I mean, I don't think we're gonna solve the regionalization of fire services in the next 3 years. That would be, you know, maybe a long-term goal that would have a lot of persuading and a lot of discussion with 3 other partners in South County. I personally think it's a great idea. I think that for us, there should be some kind of regionalization for some of our public safety services, and we could be better served. But we're not gonna solve it in 3 years, unfortunately.
No, thank you, Mike. So there is a motion on the floor. I made a motion to recommend to support the recommendation by staff to provide direction to explore the parcel tax for future to see if there is an approval rate by our residents for this. And again, 100% just for our community would be going to fire. It's not like the other. I mean, we haven't had a parcel tax, I don't think, right? Because the other ones are measures, so. So if there's a motion, there's a second?
Question, so then the white money of the 450,000 can go over to the police department, right? We can utilize another public safety area.
Well, we would have to actually really look at that
No,
because
second.
because right now, that money is funding there. If we moved to 3.0 staffing and depending on what the model is. So these would have to be some of the assumptions when we craft our model. So if we can certainly craft a model that says, okay, we want this 450 to go to police. So does the 219 become 230? In order to make up that difference so that the pot of money is the same. So I think we certainly can work with a consultant to make different assumptions and bring back different plans and different models to see where things are and then see how we pull those. So absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. So Mayor Pro Tem second the motion. So there is a motion on the floor. And just for clarity, I think it's important when we go out to the community to make sure then if there's gonna be any crafting, it's gonna come back to us, right? I mean, we'll.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Okay, so we're able to have more discussion on
The
that.
model will be approved by city council. I mean, the crafting of those models and before we actually start going out and polling, we're gonna get some direction from the council, which one we're gonna go out and pull. We're not gonna go out and pull 5 or 6 different models because we'll never get some consensus doing that.
Got it. So I'm good then. I don't have any more comments. Councilwoman Gotalejo, you have a
Yes.
final comment?
Yes, thank you. I did have a final comment. I just wanted to say that I do support this, you know, but it is important, of course, to get the community educated and get their input and have them, you know, see the value in it because there is value in it to our community. Otherwise, we wouldn't be bringing it up to them. But also we do have to be aware that this is, you know, gonna be brought up to vote. And so we do, I feel like, have to have a backup option just in case that doesn't go through. And you know, I think that's just smart of us to be prepared.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then we'll have to start, you know, at that point, by the time we get into it, we'll have also a better idea of what the next 3-year contract's gonna look like with Cal Fire.
Okay, so with that, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much, Mike, for bringing this to us. And thank you. So we will now, we do still have a presentation. And Leon, so sorry, we're still here at 10 o'clock. You're asleep already. Thanks for that. So we move on. Thank you so much for your patience as we deliberate. So we will now move on to your presentation. We will go back. Contract engineer Leon Gomez will present a brief presentation regarding the City of Soledad truck route update. And thank you so much for bringing this back to us. Thank you.
No problem. Good evening, Mayor and Council. And then Steven, I should have Leo Trujillo on the line. Fully. How's everyone doing? Walker, you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, there's some. You want to pass those too? Oh, sure.
You know, you're gonna check my. Yeah, like, well, I closed up, so I accidentally made that.
Okay, thank you. As we get our snacks in. Okay.
Long time.
Yeah. Go, bro.
And maybe this is the briefest presentation.
Oh, no, we're going 30. I don't know, got pictures of my kids on here. Okay. All right, so we did have a longer, more involved detailed presentation for you all tonight, but we abbreviated it because of the nature of the agenda, how long the items are going to be tonight. So what we'd like to do is give you a brief overview and then come back with the additional detail that we have put together as part of the evaluation of the City of Soledad truck route update. And with me today, I should have Leo Trujillo with TL Engineering. Leo, can you hear me? Can you say hello?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you, Leon. What was that?
Leo, can you hear me? And can you say hello?
Oh, good evening, council members and mayor. This is Leo Trujillo with TL Engineering.
Hi, Leo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with how did we get here? And this is a timeline of actions regarding the truck route and background. Going back to 2022, on 6/1/22, ordinance 745 establishing the new truck route was introduced. August of 22, a motion to adopt ordinance number 745 was approved. March of last year, the former city engineer provided a truck route update, which included an analysis of improvements needed at a few intersections throughout the city. September 20th of last year, I provided a truck route update which summarized the following efforts: meetings in coordination with public works, police, and fire department staff. The fact that we established an on-call agreement with a traffic engineer, who's Leo TL Engineering, to assist with a peer review of the new route. The results of public outreach surveys which were presented at that time, and next steps to further the evaluation. And the evaluation proceeded with the following items. Items 1 through 6 were evaluated with respect to both routes: the total length and vehicle miles traveled, VMT, collision data, the presence of schools, the presence of safety measures, turning movements, and truck route signage. And Leo, at this point, would you like to discuss the overall length of the routes?
Sorry, did you hand it over, Leon? I couldn't hear you.
Yes, yes, I do, Leo.
Okay, so here we have the two truck routes, the old truck route on the right, the red, and then the new truck route, the current one on the green. As you can see, in general, the old truck route is much shorter than the new truck route. It's about 2.3 miles shorter than the truck route. And not only the length, the sheer length of the difference between the two truck routes, but vehicle miles traveled, also known as VMT, is a way of evaluating transportation impacts that supports the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And so the shorter route, which is the old route, is obviously going to have lower greenhouse gas emissions.
Then,
Go ahead, Leon. Go ahead, Leon.
So the overall recommendation and where this is going is when you look at all 6 criteria that were evaluated for the truck route, whether it's total length and vehicle miles traveled, whether it's collision data, there were fewer collisions along the old truck route, indicating that it's a safer route. The presence of schools, there are less schools along the old route. The presence of existing safety measures, there are more of them along the old truck route. Turning movements, the old truck route, based on an analysis that was performed by Leo at TL Engineering, would only require minor improvements at the roundabout, whereas the new truck route required significant intersection improvements at 2 locations, West Gavilan and Metz and 3rd. And then truck route signage. The old truck route, because it's shorter by the 2.3 miles, would require less signage. So in each of the 6 criteria that were evaluated, both routes, the old route came out as the preferred alternative. So the recommendation that we're making, okay, in consultation with TL Engineering and Leo, is that the city go back to the old route for the reasons here. So.
Thank you, Leon, for that presentation, and thank you for the well-detailed also PowerPoint. I want to make, in the interest of time as well, and I want to make sure that we, well, let me go out to the public first, and then I'll come back and make my comments. So any members of the public have any comments on presentation 1? Okay. Any members of the public that are joining us via Zoom have any comments on this specific presentation? And the truck routes? Okay, I don't see any. No. I don't see any. Okay. Okay, so there's been no public comments, and I'll bring it back to the council. But I would council recommend, I know this was a big deal in terms of the truck routes. I know that we, when we approved it, it was on a 6-month kind of trial. It was supposed to come back to the council. There was a lot of feedback. There was a lot of concern. There was a lot of miscommunication. And so I would, recommend, council, if I may, is that we take this back out to the public to hold a final public meeting. I know we've had community meetings here. Unfortunately, sometimes the public doesn't come to our city council meetings, right? But because this was a big concern, especially because it impacts the new route impacted a lot of the schools, that there was a lot of public outcry in terms of when we shifted it. So I would recommend, if we can take this back out to a community meeting to gather final feedback from our residents in regards to reverting back to the old, route, and some of the concerns and issues, or to, to remain the same. And then obviously this comes with expenses on one side or the other. So before we make a decision, that's what I would recommend to the council, because it has been such a big contentious, and I don't see people here. And I know that people were concerned about it, but they're not coming to our meeting. So I'd rather it be a community meeting where it's not a council meeting and we can get public input. So council, what's your,
Sounds like a plan.
I agree with that. I would see this incomplete.
Okay. Okay, so with that then, Megan, can we ensure that we have a community meeting on this to get final comments, and then Leon will bring it back to the council, getting that final feedback from the residents, and then the council can make a decision on what we want to do.
And we'll make sure that it's a business item with
Yeah, we'll have an
appropriate.
agenda for
Yeah.
specific action at that point.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you. I waited all this time.
Thank you for that brief presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Leo, as well, for joining us. Okay, so we'll move on then with that, then we will move on. Council, I know it's 10:21, announcements and reports, and then we have council member reports, council member praises. We have the city manager report and future agenda items. In the interest of time, I don't know if you all wanna, engage in all of that, but I make a recommendation that unless there's any major, announcements and reports that you wanna make to the public, that we do those, or we can defer those for next time. You're good?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think my only thing was just for future, I had a future agenda item. I don't know if this is, if I should just say it right now.
Well, let's hold off on that. We
Okay.
have a future agenda item. We won't defer that, but under the announcements and reports, unless there's any things that are super critical that you want to report out this time, if not, we can hold the report for next time.
Next time, sure.
Okay, good, thank you. And then we'll move on then to council member praises. Can we skip that one and we could do praises next time? Okay, and then city manager's report. I know there was a verbal report, unless Megan wants to make any final
I
comments.
just have one thing. I'm going to be going to the city managers conference at the League of Cities from February 7th to 9th, so I won't be here on the 7th. We'll have someone sitting in my chair, but in case there's anything controversial, we might want to have it on February 21st. It's the only thing I would suggest.
We're okay with that. We're okay with that. Okay, that sounds good. So then we'll move on to future agenda items. And Councilwoman Torralejo, you had a future agenda item?
Yes, and it's probably one that I probably share with most of you up here, just we, talked about the ARPA funds today, and I just, wanted to, request that we have that on an agenda item, just to kind of get an update of where we're at, so that we don't have any surprises or have to make rush decisions in the future, on that item.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike and I are looking at one of the meetings in March to bring it back because we also don't want to be in a situation where there's a rush to try to reallocate the money because it's not spent. So we've been pretty hard nosed to the departments that their money might be reallocated if it's not locked in by that point.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Potez?
No.
No, right on that. And for me, I just porta potties update. I know the season's coming back. So if we can get, if I can get an update on that, that would be great. Okay, so other than that, there's no future agenda items, no further discussion, and this meeting is. Thank you so much for